The bank manager whispered into the phone and his voice was shaking so hard I could almost hear his teeth chattering. "Mr. Brooks, please do not panic, but I need you to listen to me very carefully. There is a man standing at my counter right now. He has your face. He has your voice. He is wearing your clothes. But I know it is not you because you are on the phone with me. And Mr. Brooks, he is holding your wife's hand." I replied, "That is impossible. My wife is on a business trip in Chicago." The voice on the other end lowered to a terrified hush. "No, sir. She is right here. And they just requested access to Box 704. Please come immediately. Use the back entrance. And do not tell anyone. My name is Jeremiah Brooks. I am 68 years old. I spent 40 years pouring concrete, breaking my back, and building a construction empire from the dirt up so that my family would never know the hunger I knew as a child. I thought I had earned my peace. I thought I had earned respect. But that phone call was the first shovel of dirt on my own grave. And the people holding the shovels were the ones I loved the most. Before I tell you how I lost my identity in a single afternoon, please like and subscribe if you have ever been betrayed by the people you would have taken a bullet for. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I was standing on the 9th hole of the private golf course I had paid $50,000 just to join. The sun was hitting the green perfectly. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and old money. I was about to sink a putt that would have won me $100 from a retired judge. My life was perfect. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was not a text. It was a call from Mr. Henderson, the branch manager of First City Bank. Henderson never called. He knew I was retired. He knew Tuesday was golf day. I answered, expecting him to ask about a wire transfer or a charity donation. Instead, he dropped a bomb that shattered my reality. He told me about the man. He told me about my wife, Camilla. He told me about Box 704. My blood turned into ice water. Box 704 was not just a safety deposit box. It was my doomsday vault. It contained $2 million in loose diamonds and bearer bonds. It was the emergency fund I had built over 30 years, skimming off the top of my biggest contracts just in case the world went to hell. Only 2 people in the world knew the combination to that box: me and Camilla. I dropped my golf club on the green. I did not say goodbye to the judge. I ran to my golf cart and tore across the pristine grass, leaving tire tracks that would probably get me banned. I did not care. I jumped into my car and drove like a man possessed. I ran 3 red lights. I cut off a police cruiser. I did not even look in the rearview mirror. My mind was racing, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe Henderson was having a stroke. Maybe I was having a stroke. Camilla was in Chicago. I had driven her to the airport myself yesterday morning. I had kissed her goodbye at the terminal. I had watched her walk through security. But deep down in the pit of my stomach, I knew Henderson was right. I had felt a distance in Camilla lately, a coldness. She was younger than me, beautiful, ambitious. I had hired her as my secretary 20 years ago, and she had worked her way up to being my wife. I gave her everything: furs, cars, a mansion that barely fit on the lot. But lately, she looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that had gone out of style. I skidded into the rear alley behind the bank. Henderson was waiting for me by the heavy steel service door. He looked pale, sweating through his expensive suit. He grabbed my arm and pulled me inside before I could even shut my car door. He put a finger to his lips and led me down a narrow hallway that smelled of cleaning supplies and old paper. We did not go to the lobby. We went into the security control room. It was a small dark room illuminated only by the glow of 20 monitors covering every inch of the bank. There, on the main screen in high-definition 4K resolution, I saw my own ghost. I stopped breathing. The man on the screen was black around my height with my build. He had my gray beard trimmed exactly the way my barber does it every Saturday. He was wearing a navy blue Armani suit. My hand went to my chest because I recognized that suit. I had bought that suit last week for a gala next month. It was hanging in my closet this morning, or at least I thought it was. Then I saw Camilla. She was standing next to him, her hand resting possessively on his arm. She was wearing the red dress I bought her for our anniversary. She looked radiant. She looked happy. She leaned in and whispered something in the man's ear, and then she kissed him on the cheek. It was not a peck. It was a kiss of intimacy. A kiss of conspiracy. I felt a roar build up in my throat. I turned to the door, ready to storm out there and tear them apart with my bare hands. I was a construction worker before I was a CEO. I knew how to fight. Henderson stepped in front of me, blocking the way. "Mr. Brooks, stop," Henderson hissed. "You cannot go out there." "Move, Henderson," I growled. "That is my wife, that is my money, and that is some clown wearing my clothes." "Listen to me," Henderson said, his voice desperate. "That man just presented a driver's license, a passport, and a social security card. All of them are authentic, or at least they are perfect forgeries that pass our scanners. If you go out there screaming, the security guard will see a calm man with valid ID and a raving lunatic crashing the party. Who do you think they will tackle? Who do you think the police will arrest?" I stopped. The rage was still boiling, but the street smarts that had kept me alive in the construction business kicked in. Henderson was right. If I walked out there, I would look like the imposter. I turned back to the screen. "What are they doing now?" I asked, my voice sounding like gravel. "They are signing the access log," Henderson said. "He is forging your signature." And Mr. Brooks, the machine, accepted it. I leaned in closer to the monitor. "Zoom in," I commanded. "Zoom in on his hands." Henderson typed on the keyboard. The camera zoomed in on the counter. The man was holding a pen. His hand was steady, but that was not what caught my eye. On the back of his right hand, stretching from his knuckles to his wrist, was a scar, a jagged, Y-shaped scar of raised keloid skin. I looked down at my own right hand. I had the exact same scar. I got it in 1990 on a job site in Detroit. A bucket of hot liquid asphalt had tipped over. It had burned through my glove and cooked my skin. It was a unique mark, a fingerprint of pain. There was no way this man had the same accident. "That is makeup," I whispered. "It has to be. It is a masterpiece," Henderson muttered. "They have studied you, Jerry. They did not just find a look-alike. They built a copy." I watched as the teller handed them the long metal box. Box 704. I saw Camilla's eyes light up. It was a look of pure greed. She did not look at the man. She looked at the box. She punched in the code on the keypad. She didn't hesitate. The box popped open. They began to empty it. They didn't even go to a private room. They were so confident, so arrogant, they were dumping diamonds into a leather satchel right there at the counter. "Who is he?" I asked, my fists clenching so hard my nails dug into my palms. "Who is the man I do not know," Henderson said. "But look who just walked in the front door." I looked at the monitor showing the main entrance. The automatic doors slid open. A young man walked in. He was tall white with blonde hair slicked back and a smile that looked like it cost more than my first house. He was wearing a beige suit and sunglasses. It was Hunter, my son-in-law. The air left the room. Hunter was married to my daughter Jasmine. I had handed him the keys to my construction company 2 years ago when I decided to retire. I trusted him. I treated him like the son I never had. I defended him when my friends said I was crazy for letting a white boy from the Hamptons run a black-owned business built from the mud. I told them Hunter was smart. I told them he was family. Hunter walked up to the counter. He didn't look surprised to see my wife with another man. He walked right up to the imposter and slapped him on the back. He shook the imposter's hand. Then he leaned over and kissed Camilla on the cheek. They were laughing. They were celebrating. This was not just a robbery. This was a coup. Henderson looked at me with pity. "Jerry, I am so sorry. I did not want his pity. I wanted blood." But as I watched Hunter high-five the man who was stealing my life, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't something they planned overnight. The scar, the suit, the ID, this took months, maybe years. And if they were here emptying my emergency fund, it meant the endgame had already started. "Call the police," Henderson said, reaching for the phone. "No," I stopped him. "If you call the police, Hunter will show them the paperwork. He runs the company. He manages my trust. He will tell them I am senile. He will tell them I am the imposter. They have prepared for this." "Then what are you going to do?" Henderson asked. "I am going to go home," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I am going to open my personal safe. I am going to get my gun. And then I am going to remind Hunter that I did not build my company with handshakes. I built it with a sledgehammer." I turned to leave, but I stopped at the door. "Henderson, freeze that account. Don't let them take anything else." "I can try to stall them," Henderson said. "But Jerry, be careful. That man out there, he looks just like you. But his eyes, they are empty." I ran back to my car. I didn't speed this time. I drove with a terrifying calm. I needed to get to the house before they did. I needed to be waiting for them. I needed to see the look on Camilla's face when the dead man walking was sitting in her living room chair. But as I pulled into the driveway of the estate I had built with 40 years of sweat, I saw something that made me slam on the brakes. The front door was open, and my safe, the one hidden behind the portrait in the study, the one that held my father's revolver. I knew even before I walked inside that it was already empty. They were not just stealing my money, they were disarming me, they were erasing me, and I had walked right into the trap. The front door of my estate was wide open and swinging gently in the afternoon breeze like a mouth left agape in shock. I stepped over the threshold of the home I had built with brick and mortar and blood money from the toughest years of my life. It felt like stepping into a mausoleum. The air inside was freezing as if someone had cranked the air conditioning down to 0 to preserve a corpse. My footsteps echoed on the marble floors that Camilla had insisted on importing from Italy 5 years ago. I did not call out her name. I did not call out for the housekeeper. I knew with a sickening certainty that the house was empty of allies. I ran toward my study. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This room was my sanctuary. It was where I smoked my cigars and looked over blueprints and felt like the king of my own little world. I went straight to the large oil painting of the first apartment complex I ever built in 1985. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the frame. I swung the painting aside. The steel door of the wall safe was exposed. It was already open. I stared into the dark metal void and felt my knees buckle. It was not just empty, it was scrubbed clean. My father's Smith & Wesson revolver, which I had kept oiled and loaded since the day he died, was gone. That gun was not just a weapon, it was my history. It was the only thing that stood between my family and the wolves during the riots back in the day. Gone. My passport, with all the stamps from the countries Camilla and I had visited, was gone. The $50,000 in emergency cash I kept bundled in rubber bands was gone. I stood there staring at the empty metal box and realized the terrifying truth. I had been disarmed. I had been stripped of my identity and my means of escape. I was a general standing on a battlefield without a sword or a shield. They had not just robbed me, they had declawed me. They knew I would come here. They knew exactly what I would reach for. This was not a burglary, it was a strategic demolition of my life. Then I heard the sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway outside. The heavy thud of luxury car doors closing followed. They were here. Panic is a strange thing. It can make a 68-year-old man do things he would never dream of. I looked around the room for a weapon, but there was nothing heavy enough to do damage. The voices were getting closer. I heard Hunter's laugh. It was a loud, arrogant sound that grated on my nerves. I heard the click of Camilla's heels on the marble. I had seconds. I did the only thing I could do. I opened the door to the coat closet in the corner of the study and squeezed myself inside. I pulled the door shut until there was only a sliver of light coming through. I was the founder of Brooks Construction. I employed 400 men. I had shaken hands with mayors and senators. And here I was hiding among winter coats and smelling of mothballs like a frightened child in his own house. The humiliation burned hotter than the anger. The study door opened. Light flooded the room. Through the crack, I saw them walk in. Hunter walked in first, looking like he owned the place. He threw his car keys on my mahogany desk. The disrespect of it made my jaw clench. Then Camilla walked in. She looked beautiful and dangerous in her red dress. And finally, Curtis walked in. The imposter. Seeing him in my house, breathing my air, wearing my face, was like looking into a twisted funhouse mirror. Hunter sat on the edge of my desk. He picked up my crystal decanter and poured himself a drink. He did not even offer one to the others. He looked at Curtis and grinned. "You did good today, Curtis. You really sold it at the bank. The old man is probably still driving around in his golf cart looking for his balls while we are cashing out his life savings." Curtis laughed. It sounded exactly like my laugh. It was terrifying. He rubbed his hand over the scar on his right hand. The fake scar. "I told you I studied him. I watched hours of his interviews. I know how he walks. I know how he clears his throat. But Hunter, when do I get the rest of the money? I am not signing those transfer papers tomorrow until I see the wire in my account." Hunter waved his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about the money. You sign the papers transferring the company to me tomorrow morning, and you will have $500,000 in your offshore account by noon. Then you can disappear to Mexico like we planned. Just make sure you burn that suit. I do not want to see it again." Camilla walked over to the window and looked out. She wrapped her arms around herself as if she was cold. "Can we hurry this up, please? I want to get out of here." Hunter looked at her over the rim of his glass. "What is the matter, Camilla? Getting sentimental about the old house?" She turned around and her face was twisted in disgust. "It is not the house. It is the smell. This whole room smells like him. It smells like old man and cheap cigars and stale sweat. It makes me sick to my stomach. I want to sell this place and burn the furniture. I cannot wait until he is gone so I can finally breathe fresh air again." I stopped breathing in the closet. My wife, the woman I had worshipped for 20 years, the woman I had pulled out of a cramped apartment and given a palace. She did not just hate me. She was repulsed by me. She thought I smelled. The cruelty of it was so casual and so absolute that it shattered whatever tiny piece of hope I was still holding on to. I realized then that she had never loved me. She had tolerated me. She had endured me like a bad job until her pension kicked in. Hunter laughed. "Well, do not worry, darling. After tomorrow, you will never have to smell him again. Once he is in the system, he will be someone else's problem." That was it. I could not hide anymore. I could not listen to them carve up my life and spit on my memory while I cowered in the dark. If I was going down, I was going down swinging. I kicked the closet door open. It slammed against the wall with a thunderous bang. I stepped out. My fists were clenched. My eyes were burning. Welcome home, family. The three of them spun around. Curtis looked like he had seen a ghost. He actually took a step back and raised his hands as if to ward me off. For a second, the mask slipped, and I saw the fear of a small time crook facing a real man. But Hunter did not flinch. He did not look scared. He did not look guilty. He looked annoyed. He took a sip of his drink and set the glass down on my desk. He looked at me with cold blue eyes that held zero respect. "Well, look who decided to join the party. You should have stayed on the golf course, Jerry. You would have been happier there." I walked toward him. I wanted to wrap my hands around his throat and squeeze until that arrogant smile disappeared forever. "Get out of my chair. Get out of my house. And you." I pointed a shaking finger at Camilla. "You make me sick. You talk about my smell. You reek of betrayal. You reek of rot." Camilla did not cower. She straightened her back and looked at me with ice in her veins. She pulled her phone out of her purse. She did not look at me anymore. She looked at Hunter. "Do it." Hunter nodded. He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. He did not dial 911. He pressed a speed dial. "Security. Get in here. The package is unsecured." The package. I was the package. I lunged at Hunter. I was fast for my age, but he was 30 years younger. He sidestepped me easily and shoved me hard against the bookshelf. My back slammed into the wood. Pain shot down my spine. Before I could recover, the study doors burst open. Two men walked in. They were not police. They were not the regular neighborhood security. These men were giants. They wore black tactical gear and had no badges. They were private muscle. Mercenaries. "Grab him," Hunter ordered. I tried to fight. I threw a punch that connected with the first guard's jaw, but it was like hitting a concrete wall. He did not even blink. He grabbed my arm and twisted it behind my back with professional efficiency. I heard my shoulder pop. I screamed in pain. The second guard kicked my legs out from under me. I hit the floor hard. They pinned me down, pressing my face into the expensive carpet Camilla loved so much. I struggled. I roared. "Let me go. This is my house. I am Jeremiah Brooks." Hunter walked over and stood above me. He looked down at me like I was a bug he had just stepped on. "Not anymore, old man. You are just a loose end." Then Camilla began her performance. She brought the phone to her ear. Her face transformed instantly. The cold hatred vanished and was replaced by a mask of sheer terror. She was crying. She was shaking. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. 911. "Please help me. There is a man in my house. He is attacking my husband. He is violent. He has a weapon. Please hurry. He thinks he is Jeremiah Brooks, but my husband is right here next to me. The intruder is delusional. I think he's going to kill us." She looked down at me while she spoke to the operator. Her eyes were dry and dead, but her voice was hysterical. "Please send the police. Send an ambulance. He is screaming that he owns this house. He is completely insane." I looked up at Curtis. The imposter was standing next to Camilla, holding her hand, looking concerned. He was playing the role of the terrified husband. I realized then that this was not just a robbery. This was an erasure. They were not just taking my money. They were stealing my sanity. They were stealing my name. The sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. And for the first time in my life, I was not relieved to hear the police coming. I was terrified, because I knew when they walked through that door, they would not see a victim. They would see an angry black man pinned to the floor screaming about conspiracies, while a crying woman and a calm white man in a suit told them exactly what they wanted to hear. I was trapped, and the nightmare had only just begun. The flashing red and blue lights bouncing off the walls of my study felt like a disco for the damned. 2 uniformed officers stormed through the open doors with their hands on their holsters and their eyes scanning the room for threats. From my position pinned against the floor with a knee digging into my spine, I knew exactly what threat they saw. They saw a 68-year-old black man screaming and struggling against private security. They did not see the owner of the house. They saw a problem that needed to be neutralized. "Officer, please help me," Camilla screamed, her voice cracking with practiced hysteria. She pointed a trembling finger at me. He broke in. "He is crazy. He thinks he is my husband." The first officer, a young man with a buzz cut, pointed his taser at me. "Stay down. Do not move." I stopped struggling. I knew how this game was played. If I moved, they would taser me. If I shouted, they would beat me. I took a deep breath and tried to speak calmly. "Officer, my name is Jeremiah Brooks. This is my house. These people are intruders. Please check my identification." That was the trap. I had no identification. My safe was empty. My wallet was gone. Hunter stepped forward. He walked with the easy confidence of a man who has never been afraid of the police in his life. He held his hands up in a non-threatening gesture, his beige suit looking immaculate amidst the chaos. "Officers, thank God you are here. I am Hunter Van Doren. This is my mother-in-law, Mrs. Brooks, and her husband, Mr. Jeremiah Brooks." He gestured to Curtis the imposter. Curtis stood tall, adjusting his tie, looking every inch the dignified businessman I used to be. He reached into his pocket and produced a leather wallet. He handed a driver license to the officer. The officer looked at the ID. He looked at Curtis, then he looked down at me. The resemblance was uncanny, but the ID matched the man standing up, not the man on the floor. "Who is this, then?" the officer asked, gesturing at me with his boot. Hunter sighed, a sound of deep, tragic exhaustion. "This is the man we called about. He has been stalking the family for weeks. We believe he is suffering from early-onset Alzheimer and severe delusions. He has convinced himself he is Mr. Brooks. He gets confused. He gets violent. We tried to help him, but he attacked the security guards. It was a masterclass in manipulation." Hunter spoke their language. He was calm, he was articulate, he was white. He painted a picture that made sense to them. A crazy old man off his meds, a danger to society. "That is a lie," I roared, unable to hold back. "Check his hand. He has a fake scar at his makeup. Check his hand." The officer did not check Curtis' hand. Instead, he nodded to his partner. "Cuff him." They hauled me up from the floor. They wrenched my arms behind my back so hard I felt my rotator cuff tear. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into my wrists. I looked at Camilla. She buried her face in Curtis' shoulder, pretending to sob. I looked at Hunter. He gave the officer a sympathetic nod, as if they were partners in dealing with a difficult child. "I am sorry you have to deal with this, officers," Hunter said smoothly. "We just want him to get the help he needs. Please take him to St. Jude Psychiatric Ward. We will pay for his evaluation. We do not want to press charges yet. We just want him safe." Safe. He wanted me locked away where no one could hear me scream. They dragged me out of my own house. My neighbors were watching from their driveways. I saw Mrs. Higgins, who I had waved to every morning for 10 years, covering her mouth in shock. I wanted to yell to her to tell her it was me, Jerry, but shame choked the words in my throat. I was shoved into the back of the cruiser. The hard plastic seat smelled of vomit and despair. As we drove away, I watched my house disappear in the rearview mirror. It was the last time I would see it as a free man. The holding room at St. Jude Psychiatric Ward was a white box with no windows. The air smelled of antiseptic and stale urine. They had taken my belt, my shoelaces, and my dignity. I sat on a metal cot bolted to the floor, shivering in a paper gown. My shoulder throbbed with a dull ache. I did not know how much time had passed. There were no clocks. Time was just a fluid concept, measured by the buzzing of the fluorescent lights overhead. I was trying to keep my mind sharp, trying to formulate a plan, but panic was clawing at the edges of my thoughts. Then the heavy metal door buzzed and opened. A young woman walked in. My heart leaped into my throat. It was Jasmine, my daughter. My Jazzy. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red and puffy. She was wringing her hands, a nervous habit she had since she was a little girl. Hunter stood in the doorway behind her, leaning against the frame like a prison warden. He did not come in. He just watched. "Jasmine," I said, my voice breaking. "Oh, thank God, baby girl. You have to get me out of here. You have to tell them who I am." I stood up to hug her, but she took a step back. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and pity that broke my heart more than the handcuffs ever could. "Dad," she whispered, "or whoever you are, please stop." I froze. "Whoever I am. Jasmine, look at me," I pleaded. "It is your father. Look at my eyes. Do you remember when you were 7 years old? We were in Central Park. I was teaching you how to ride that pink bicycle with the tassels. You fell and scraped your knee and you cried. I bought you a blue popsicle to make you feel better, and we sat on the bench and watched the ducks until the sun went down. Only your father knows that, Jazzy. Please." For a second, I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. The memory hit her. She gasped and her hand went to her mouth. Tears spilled over her cheeks. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the doubt creeping in. She took a step toward me. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling. From the doorway, Hunter cleared his throat. It was a sharp, commanding sound. Jasmine looked back at him. Hunter did not say a word. He just looked at her with a cold, hard stare. He tapped his watch. It was a silent reminder. A reminder of his control. A reminder of whatever lies he had fed her. Jasmine turned back to me. The light in her eyes died. The wall came back up. She steeled herself, reciting lines that sounded rehearsed. "The doctors say you are sick. They say you confabulate memories. You steal stories you heard or read. You are not well. You need to rest. You need to let the doctors help you." "Jasmine." "No, listen to me," I shouted, stepping forward. "Hunter is lying to you. He is stealing the company. He replaced me." She backed away until she hit the wall. "Stop it," she screamed, closing her eyes. "Stop yelling. My father would never yell at me. My father is at home. He is sick, but he is home. You are just a tragedy." She turned around and ran out of the room. I tried to follow her, but the door slammed shut in my face. I pounded on the reinforced glass. "Jazzy, come back. Do not leave me here. Do not leave me with him." But she was gone. My last hope had walked out the door and left me to rot. I slid down the wall until I hit the floor, burying my face in my hands. I wept. Not for myself, but for her, for how lost she must be to look at her own father and see a stranger. The lock buzzed again. I looked up expecting a doctor. It was Hunter. He walked in alone. He closed the door behind him and locked it. He stood over me, his hands in his pockets, looking down at me with a smirk that was pure evil. "That was touching, Jerry," he said. "Really. The bike story almost got me. You have a good memory for an old man. You poisoned her against me," I spat. "You brainwashed my daughter." "Brainwashed is such a harsh word," Hunter said, chuckling. "I prefer to call it re-education. Jasmine is a sweet girl, but she is weak. She needs to be told what to see. And right now she sees a sick old man who needs to be institutionalized for his own safety." He crouched down so his face was level with mine. His expensive cologne filled the small room, choking me. "Do you know why she believed me, Jerry? Do you know why everyone believed me when I said you were losing your mind over the last 3 months?" I stared at him, hate burning in my gut. "Why?" "Because I made it true," Hunter whispered. He pulled a small orange pill bottle out of his pocket. He rattled it next to my ear. "Your blood pressure medication. Or at least that is what you thought it was. For the last 3 months I have been swapping your pills. I replaced them with a mild hallucinogen and a sedative. That is why you have been forgetting things, Jerry. That is why you have been having mood swings. That is why you fell asleep at the dinner table. You weren't getting old, you were getting dosed." The realization hit me like a physical blow. The fog in my brain, the lost keys, the times I forgot names. I thought it was age. I thought I was losing my edge. I had even gone to the doctor, but Camilla had insisted on coming with me, and she must have intercepted the results. They had been gaslighting me chemically and psychologically for months, preparing the ground for this very moment. "You are a monster," I hissed. "I am a businessman," Hunter corrected. "And right now I am closing the biggest deal of my life." He pulled a folded document and a pen from his inside jacket pocket. He placed them on the metal cot. "This is a power of attorney, Jerry. It gives me full control over your assets, your company, and your medical decisions. Sign it. If you sign it, I will make sure you get moved to a nice private facility with a garden. You can live out your days playing bingo and forgetting who you are. And if I do not sign it, I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Hunter shrugged. Then you stay here, in the state ward, with the violent offenders and the screamers, and I will make sure the doctors keep you so sedated you will not even know your own name by Christmas. You will die here, Jerry, alone, drooling on yourself. He held out the pen. Sign it, old man. It is over. I looked at the pen. I looked at the paper that would sign away 40 years of my life. I looked at Hunter's smug, flawless face. I stood up slowly. I took the pen. Hunter smiled, thinking he had won. I looked him dead in the eye. Go to hell. I spit in his face. A thick glob of saliva hit him right on the cheek. Hunter recoiled, wiping his face with a look of absolute disgust. His composure cracked. His eyes went black with rage. Have it your way, he snarled. He turned to the door and banged on it. Nurse! The patient is agitated. He is violent. He needs sedation. Now! 2 orderlies burst into the room. They were big men with thick arms. One of them held a syringe filled with a clear liquid. Hold him down, Hunter ordered, pointing at me. He attacked me. Put him under. I fought. I swung my fists, but I was exhausted and outnumbered. They tackled me to the cot. I felt the cold needle pierce my arm. I tried to fight the darkness that rushed into my veins. I tried to keep my eyes open. I tried to hold on to my name. Jeremiah Brooks. I am Jeremiah Brooks. But the darkness was too strong. The last thing I saw was Hunter standing over me, wiping his cheek, watching me fade away. And the last thing I heard was his voice whispering from a million miles away. Goodbye, Jerry. Sweet dreams. The cold liquid burned its way up my arm, and I felt the chemical fog trying to drag me under. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket of artificial sleep. Most men in my position would have panicked or surrendered to the darkness, but Hunter had made a fatal mistake. He thought he was dealing with Jeremiah Brooks, the CEO who signed checks in an air-conditioned office. He forgot that before I wore Italian suits, I wore hand-me-downs in the projects. He forgot that I survived the crack epidemic of the 80s, not by being soft, but by knowing exactly how to survive when the world wants you dead. I knew that fighting the sedatives with willpower alone was a losing battle. I needed pain. Pain is the only thing loud enough to scream over the silence of sedation. I clamped my teeth down on the side of my tongue. I bit down until I tasted the hot, metallic tang of copper. I bit harder until the sharp bolt of agony shot through my jaw and shocked my nervous system awake. It was brutal, but it worked. The fog receded just enough for me to keep my eyes open. The orderlies tossed me onto the cot like a bag of wet cement. They laughed about getting overtime and walked out, locking the heavy steel door behind them. I lay there for 10 minutes, counting the seconds by the throb in my tongue. I watched the red, blinking eye of the security camera in the corner. I knew Hunter would be watching. I had to give him a show. I let my mouth hang open. I let the drool run down my chin. I twitched my legs spasmodically like a man whose brain was frying. When I was sure they were not coming back, I rolled off the cot. I crawled to the blind spot in the corner of the room right under the camera. It was a trick I learned in juvenile detention 60 years ago. Every camera has a blind spot if you get close enough to the wall. I shoved 2 fingers down my throat. My stomach convulsed. I retched violently, purging the clear liquid and the bile onto the floor. It was disgusting and humiliating, but as I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, I felt my mind sharpen. The sedative was still in my blood, but the bulk of it was on the concrete. I was weak, but I was me. I spent the next 12 hours playing the role of the vegetable. I sat on the floor staring at the wall. I mumbled nonsense syllables whenever a nurse came in to check my vitals. I peed on myself once just to sell the act. It cost me every ounce of dignity I had left, but it bought me invisibility. They stopped looking at me as a threat. They started looking at me as a piece of furniture. The next morning, a new shift started. A young nurse walked in. She was a black woman, maybe 25 years old, with braids pulled back in a tight bun, and eyes that looked too tired for her age. Her name tag read, Nia. She was not like the others. She did not look at me with disgust or indifference. She looked at the clipboard in her hand, and then she looked at me with a deep frown. She checked the monitors. She checked my IV drip. Then she looked back at the clipboard. I saw her hesitate. She bit her lip. She knew something was wrong. Hunter had paid for a diagnosis of Alzheimer and dementia, but biology does not lie. The blood work must have come back clean or inconsistent with the heavy medication I was supposedly on. She leaned over to check my pulse. Her hand was warm. She was close enough that I could smell her peppermint gum. This was my only chance. If I was wrong about her, I would be sedated until I died. If I was right, she was my lifeline. I grabbed her wrist. I did not grab it hard. I grabbed it with intention. She gasped and tried to pull away, but I held on. I dropped the slack-jawed act. I looked her dead in the eye with the intensity that used to make foremen tremble on my construction sites. "Do not scream," I whispered, my voice raspy but clear. "Look at the blood work, Nia. It does not match the chart. You know it does not match." She froze. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the door, then back at me. "Who are you?" she whispered. Her voice was shaking. "The chart says you are Jeremiah Brooks, but the blood type is wrong for the medication history they gave us, and your liver enzymes are perfect for a man who is supposed to be on this cocktail." "I am Jeremiah Brooks," I said, "but the man who put me here is trying to erase me. Listen to me very carefully. I have a lawyer. His name is Thaddeus Marshall. You call him. You tell him Omega Red." Nia shook her head, backing away. "I cannot. I will lose my job. They will arrest me." I gripped the side of the cot. I did not beg. I negotiated. "If you make that call, Thaddeus Marshall will give you $50,000 in cash by tonight. No questions asked. You are a student, right? I saw the textbook in your bag. $50,000 pays off your loans and gets you out of this hellhole. Or you can walk out that door and let an innocent man die." She stared at me. I saw the war in her eyes. Fear against conscience. Greed against safety. She was young, but she was smart. She looked at the camera in the corner, then she looked at the vomit I had tried to hide in the blind spot. She realized I had purged the drugs. She realized I was sane. "Omega Red," she repeated softly. "Yes," I said. "Do not use the hospital phone. Use a burner. Tell him Jerry says the wolf is in the hen house." She did not say yes. She just nodded once. A sharp jerk of her chin. She adjusted my blanket, making it look like she was just doing her rounds, and walked out. I did not know if she would do it. I just had to pray that $50,000 was enough to buy a little bravery. Night fell like a hammer. The hospital went quiet. The only sounds were the distant moans of other patients and the hum of the ventilation. I did not sleep. I lay on the cot with my eyes closed, my ears straining against the silence. I had a bad feeling. Hunter was impatient. He needed to sell my company fast to pay off his debts. He could not risk a competency hearing. He could not risk me waking up. Around 3 in the morning, the electronic lock on my door clicked. It was not the loud buzz of the nurse's station opening it. It was a soft, mechanical click like someone had used an override key. I did not move. I kept my breathing shallow and rhythmic. A figure slipped into the room. He was dressed in scrubs, but he was not a nurse. He moved like a cat. He was big, broad shoulders. He wore a surgical mask and gloves. He did not check the monitors. He did not check my chart. He went straight for the pillow on the spare cot. He picked it up. He tested its weight. Then he turned toward me. He was going to suffocate me. It would look like I died in my sleep. Heart failure brought on by stress. A tragedy, but not a crime. I waited. My muscles were coiled springs. My heart was a drum. He loomed over me. I could see his eyes. They were cold, dead eyes. He raised the pillow. Now. I exploded into motion. My right hand, which had been hidden under the blanket, whipped out. I was holding a jagged shard of hard plastic I had snapped off the meal tray at dinner. I drove it upward with every ounce of strength I had left. It sank into his thigh. The assassin let out a muffled grunt of pain and dropped the pillow. I did not hesitate. I rolled off the cot and tackled him around the knees. He was younger and stronger, but he was surprised and he was hurt. We hit the floor with a heavy thud. He tried to shout, but I was ready. I grabbed the pillow he had dropped and shoved it into his face. I reversed his own weapon on him. He thrashed. He clawed at my arms. He punched me in the ribs, and I felt something crack. The pain was blinding, but I did not let go. I thought about Camilla laughing at me. I thought about Hunter stealing my name. I thought about my father, his gun. I channeled 40 years of rage into my arms. I rode him like a bull, pressing the pillow down until his thrashing slowed, until his hands stopped clawing, until he went limp. I held it for another minute just to be sure. I was panting, sweating, shaking. I checked his pulse. He was alive, but he was out cold. I stood up. My ribs were on fire. My head was spinning. But I was alive. I looked at the camera. I realized the little red light was not blinking. Hunter must have paid someone to loop the footage. He had cleared the way for my murder. Instead, he had cleared the way for my escape. I worked fast. I stripped the unconscious man of his scrubs. I took his shoes. They were a size too big, but they would do. I tied his hands and feet with strips of bedsheet and gagged him with a sock. I dragged him onto the cot and pulled the blanket up over his head. In the dim light, he looked just like a sleeping patient. I put on the scrubs. I pulled the surgical mask over my face. I found his ID badge clipped to his pocket. It said Orderly Mike. I opened the door and peeked into the hallway. It was empty. I walked out. I did not run. Running draws attention. I walked with a purpose. I found a large laundry cart filled with dirty sheets near the service elevator. I looked around. No one was watching. I climbed into the canvas bag, burying myself under layers of soil linens that smelled of bleach and sickness. I pulled the top sheets over me. Minutes later, I felt the cart moving. Someone was pushing it. I held my breath. The cart bumped over the threshold of the elevator. We went down. I counted the floors. When the cart stopped and I heard the sound of a loading dock door opening, I knew I was close. The cold night air hit my face through the fabric. The cart was tipped over. I tumbled out onto a pile of laundry bags in the alley behind the hospital. I lay there for a moment, staring up at the city sky. I was bruised. I was exhausted. I was a fugitive. But I was free. I stood up and looked at my reflection in a puddle. I looked like a ghost. But as I turned toward the city lights, toward the streets where I had been born, I felt a fire lighting in my belly. Hunter thought he had buried me. He thought he had won, but he had made the same mistake everyone had made my entire life. He underestimated Jeremiah Brooks. I started walking. I had no money. I had no phone. But I knew exactly where to go. I was going back to the hood. I was going back to the only people who never cared about my bank account. And from there, I was going to burn Hunter is world to the ground. The city at 3 a.m. is a beast that eats the weak. I walked down 4th Avenue with my head down and my shoulders hunched against the biting wind. The stolen shoes I had taken from the assassin were a size too big, and they blistered my heels with every step. I was wearing hospital scrubs that smelled of industrial bleach, and another man is sweat. My ribs throbbed in a rhythm of dull fire every time I took a breath. I was Jeremiah Brooks. Jeremiah. I was a man who had shook hands with presidents. I was a man whose signature could move mountains of steel and glass. And here I was walking past garbage cans looking for something to cover myself with because I was freezing to death. I stopped in front of an electronics store. The security grate was down, but the wall of televisions in the display window was still on. They were all tuned to the 24-hour news cycle. And there I was. Or at least there was the man who stole my face. The headline scrolled across 20 screens in bright red letters. Construction tycoon Jeremiah Brooks announces shock retirement, hands reins to son-in-law. I watched in silence as the camera zoomed in on Curtis. He was standing at a podium in the lobby of my headquarters. He looked magnificent. He was wearing my favorite charcoal suit. His posture was perfect. He was smiling that wide, charismatic smile that I used to charm city councils. Next to him stood Hunter. He looked humble. He looked grateful. He had a hand on Curtis's shoulder like a dutiful son. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash the glass. Seeing Curtis masquerading as me was worse than the physical pain. It was a violation of my soul. He was not just stealing my money, he was stealing my legacy. He was taking 40 years of hard work and handing it over to a wolf in sheep's clothing while the whole world applauded. I turned away from the window. I could not watch anymore. Anger is a good fuel, but it does not fill an empty stomach. I had not eaten in 24 hours. My mouth was dry as sandpaper. I checked my pockets out of habit, but there was nothing. No wallet, no phone, no keys. I was a ghost. I needed to move. If I stayed in the city center, the police would pick me up. Hunter would have put out a bolo for an escaped mental patient. I needed to go somewhere where the police did not look too closely. I needed to go home. Not the mansion on the hill. My real home. I started walking south. It was 10 miles to the neighborhood where I was born. 10 miles of concrete and asphalt. My body screamed at me to stop. My legs felt like lead. I hallucinated from dehydration. I saw Camilla's face in the headlights of passing cars. I heard Jasmine's voice in the wind, but I kept putting one foot in front of the other. I counted the blocks. I focused on the pain in my feet because the pain meant I was still alive. The sun was just starting to bleed gray light into the sky when the architecture changed. The glass towers faded away, replaced by brick tenements and boarded-up storefronts. The streets were dirtier here, but the air smelled familiar. It smelled of ozone and fried grease and survival. I was back in the hood. I walked down Martin Luther King Boulevard until I saw the spinning red and white pole. Otis's barber shop. Ideally, it should have been closed, but I knew Otis. He opened at 5 in the morning for the shift workers and the insomniacs. The lights were on inside. I pushed the door open. The bell chimed. It was the same sound I had heard since I was 10 years old. The shop smelled of bay rum and talc powder and old conversation. Otis was sweeping the floor. He was 70 years old now, with hair like white wool and hands that were twisted with arthritis but still steady with a razor. He heard the door open and looked up. He saw a man in dirty scrubs with a face covered in grime and dried blood. He did not see his old friend. He saw a junkie looking for trouble. He grabbed a baseball bat from behind the counter. He moved fast for an old man. "Get out," he barked. "We are not open for business. I do not have any cash, and I do not have any drugs. Turn around and walk out before I crack your head open." I tried to speak, but my throat was so dry it came out as a croak. I stepped into the light. I raised my hands. "Otis," I rasped. "It is me. It is Jerry." Otis tightened his grip on the bat. He squinted at me. "Jerry who?" "Jeremiah Brooks," I said. "Jeremiah Brooks. I sat in that chair right there when I got my first haircut. You gave me a lollipop because I cried. I paid for your hip surgery last year, Otis. Look at me." Otis froze. He dropped the bat. It clattered loudly on the checkerboard floor. He walked slowly toward me, his eyes wide with disbelief. He reached out and touched my face. He felt the grit on my skin. He looked into my eyes. "Lord have mercy," he whispered. "Jerry, is that really you? The news said you were retiring. They said you were at a gala." "That is not me, Otis," I said, my legs finally giving out. I grabbed the barber chair to keep from falling. "That is an imposter. They took everything, Otis. They took my name." Otis caught me before I hit the floor. He helped me into the chair. He did not ask questions. Not yet. He ran to the back and got a bottle of water and a towel. He wiped my face. He gave me a sip of water. I saw tears running down his weathered cheeks. "I thought you were dead," he said. "Or I thought you had finally forgotten about us." "I never forgot," I said. And that was the truth. The world thought Jeremiah Brooks was a self-made billionaire who left the hood behind. They did not know that for the last 10 years I had secretly bought every building on this block. I kept the rents low. I paid for repairs. I put kids through college. I did it through shell companies because I did not want the praise. I just wanted my people to be safe. Otis knew. A few others knew. And that loyalty was the only currency I had left. "Lock the door." "Otis," I said, "I need you to make a call." Otis went to the door and flipped the sign to closed. He pulled the shades down. He came back and handed me his cell phone. "Who are we calling?" "Thaddeus Marshall," I said. "Tell him to come to the shop. Tell him to come alone. And tell him to bring the file." An hour later, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. Thaddeus Marshall walked in. He was the only man I knew who could wear a three-piece suit in this neighborhood and not get mugged. He was my lawyer, my oldest friend, and the only person who knew where all the bodies were buried. He looked at me sitting in the barber chair, still wearing the scrubs, and he did not flinch. He did not look horrified. He looked angry, a cold professional anger. He set his briefcase on the counter next to the combs and scissors. "You look like hell, Jerry," he said. "I feel like hell," I replied. "Tell me the damage, Thad. Do not sugarcoat it." Marshall opened his briefcase. He pulled out a stack of papers. "It is bad, Jerry. Worse than we thought. Hunter is moving at light speed. He has Curtis signing documents as fast as they can print them. They have liquidated your stock portfolio. They have drained the operating accounts. They are transferring assets to shell companies in the Cayman Islands." I closed my eyes. 40 years of work disappearing in 48 hours. "Can we stop them?" I asked. Marshall shook his head. "Not legally, not fast enough. Hunter has the power of attorney you supposedly signed. He has the marriage certificate. He has the board's approval because Curtis charmed them. If we go to a judge now, it will take weeks to prove Curtis is a fake. By then, the money will be gone, and you will be buried in paperwork or buried in the ground. There has to be something," I said, slamming my hand on the armrest. "Hunter is smart, but he is greedy. Greedy men make mistakes." Marshall nodded. He pulled a single sheet of paper from the file. He slid it across the counter. You are right. He made a mistake. I did some digging into his personal finances. Not the company accounts, but his own. The boy is broke, Jerry. He is leveraging everything. He owes money all over town. But that is not the worst part. What is it? He owes the Russian mob, Marshall said. $10 million. He made some bad bets on futures and he borrowed from the VOR. They are not like the banks, Jerry. They do not send foreclosure notices, they send men with hammers. I looked at the paper. It was a surveillance report. Hunter had been meeting with known associates of the Petrov organization. Marshall continued. That is why he is rushing. The Russians gave him a deadline. He has 48 hours to pay them back or they're going to kill him. He needs to sell the company immediately. He has a buyer lined up, a private equity firm from Dubai. They are signing the deal at the Grand Hotel on Friday. I stared at the paper and a smile slowly spread across my face. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf who just realized the hunter is out of bullets. So he is desperate, I said. He is terrified, Marshall corrected. He is not selling the company because he wants to be rich. He is selling it because he wants to stay alive. He needs that cash influx to pay the Russians before Friday night. I stood up. The pain in my ribs was still there, but it felt different now. It felt like fuel. He needs to sell the company, I said softly. Okay, let us help him. Otis and Marshall looked at me confused. Help him, Otis asked. Have you lost your mind, Jerry? I walked over to the mirror. I looked at my reflection. I looked like a bum, but behind the grime I saw the man who had built skyscrapers. We are not going to stop the sale, I said. We are going to let him walk into that room. We are going to let Curtis sign those papers. And we are going to make sure that when Hunter hands over the keys to my kingdom, he is handing over a hollow shell. Marshall, his eyes lit up. He understood. The dead man is trust, he whispered. Exactly, I said. Years ago, Marshall and I had set up a fail-safe, a poison pill clause buried so deep in the corporate bylaws that even Hunter would have missed it. It was designed for a scenario where I was kidnapped or incapacitated. It was called The Dead Man is Trust. If Jeremiah Brooks was declared incompetent or dead without a body, 100% of the company as liquid assets and ownership would automatically transfer to a charitable trust for black veterans. The transfer would be instantaneous. The company accounts would zero out. The stock would become worthless paper. But to trigger it, I need proof, I said. I need proof that they declared me incompetent. Marshall pulled another document from his bag. They did it this morning. Hunter filed an emergency motion with the court using a forged medical report from St. Jude. You are officially a ward of the state, Jerry. Legally, you do not exist. I laughed. It was a dry hacking sound. Good. If I do not exist, then I cannot be sued. Hunter thinks he stripped me of my power. He just gave me the nuclear codes. I turned to Otis. I need a suit, Otis. I need a shave. And I need the boys. Call everyone. We are going to crash a party. Otis grinned. He picked up his razor. I will make you look like $1 million, Jerry. I sat back in the chair. The plan was forming in my mind. It was dangerous. It was insane. But it was the only way. Hunter had 48 hours to pay the Russians. I had 48 hours to make sure that when he opened the vault, all he found was dust. Marshall, get the paperwork ready, I said. We are going to let them sell the company, and then we are going to watch them burn. As Otis draped the cape over me, I closed my eyes. The fear was gone. The hesitation was gone. Jeremiah Brooks was dead. Long live the ghost. The streets do not forget, and they do not forgive, but mostly they do not sleep. While Hunter sat in my air-conditioned office sipping scotch and thinking he was a king, the real power was moving through the cracks in the pavement outside. Otis had put the word out. The homeless veterans, the street corner hustlers, the old ladies watching from their second-floor windows. They were my surveillance network. They were invisible to men like Hunter because he did not think they were people, but they saw everything. Within 3 hours, we had a bead on Curtis. He did not go back to the mansion to play house with Camilla. He slipped out the back of the corporate headquarters. He got into a nondescript sedan that was parked 3 blocks away. He drove west away from the money and toward the decaying skyline of the industrial district. Otis and I followed him in a beat-up van that smelled of stale cigarettes and engine oil. He parked in front of a crumbling tenement building on 4th Street. The windows were boarded up and the fire escape was rusting off the brick. It was a place where hope went to die. I watched from the van as the man wearing my face hurried inside, clutching a pharmacy bag like it was gold. "He is not just a greedy actor," Otis whispered. "He has got an anchor here." We waited until he came out an hour later. He looked exhausted. The arrogance he displayed at the bank was gone. His shoulders were slumped. He rubbed his face with both hands. He got back in the car and drove off, presumably back to his cage at my mansion. Otis stayed to watch the building. I went inside. I picked the lock on the front door of apartment 3B. It was not hard. The wood was so rotten I could have kicked it in, but I did not want to make a scene. The apartment was clean but barren. There was a mattress on the floor, a hot plate, and in the corner there was a hospital bed hooked up to a dialysis machine that looked like it was bought secondhand in the 90s. A little girl was lying in the bed. She could not have been more than 8 years old. She was sleeping. Her skin was pale and she looked fragile, like a porcelain doll that had been dropped and glued back together. On the nightstand was the pharmacy bag Curtis had brought. It was filled with anti-rejection medication and painkillers. Expensive stuff. Stuff you do not get with Medicaid. I looked at the girl, and the rage that had been fueling me for days cooled into something harder and sharper. Understanding. Curtis was not doing this for a payout. He was doing this to keep her alive. Hunter had found a desperate man and turned him into a weapon. It did not excuse what he did, but it gave me the leverage I needed. I sat in the single wooden chair in the darkest corner of the room, and I waited. Curtis came back the next evening. I heard his heavy footsteps on the stairs. He unlocked the door and stepped in carrying a bag of takeout food. He locked the door behind him and let out a long sigh. He began to unbutton his shirt, peeling off the costume of Jeremiah Brooks. "Hello, me," I said from the shadows. Curtis spun around. He dropped the food. His hand went to his waistband, but he did not have a gun. He froze when he saw me. It must have been terrifying. It was like looking at his own ghost, but a ghost that had been through hell and came back for blood. I was wearing a suit Otis had found for me. It was 10 years out of style, but it was sharp. I was shaved, I was clean, and I was sitting in his chair like I owned his life. "Do not scream," I said, my voice low and level. "If you scream, I walk out that door. And if I walk out that door, Hunter wins. And if Hunter wins, you die. And if you die, she dies." I gestured to the sleeping girl. Curtis trembled. He looked from me to the girl. He looked like he was about to vomit. "How did you find me?" he whispered. "I built this city," I said. "There is not a brick in it I do not know. Sit down, Curtis." He sat on the floor. He could not stand. His legs gave out. He looked up at me with terrified eyes. "Are you going to kill me?" he asked. I leaned forward. The light from the street lamp outside cut across my face, highlighting the real scar on my hand versus the painted one on his. "I should kill you. I should kill. You stole my life. You stole my wife. You stole my company." "But I looked at your daughter, Curtis. Kidney failure, right. Expensive." Curtis nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "Hunter pays for the treatment. He said if I play the part, he gets her to the top of the donor list in Switzerland. He said he would save her." I laughed. It was a harsh bark of a sound. "Hunter lied to you, son. Hunter is $10 million in debt to the Russian mob. He does not have the money to send anyone to Switzerland. He is selling my company to pay a blood debt. And do you know what happens to loose ends when the deal is done?" Curtis went pale. "You are a loose end, Curtis. You are a walking, talking piece of evidence. The moment you sign those papers on Friday, the moment the money hits his account, he is going to put a bullet in your head. And he is definitely not going to take care of an orphan girl with medical bills. He is going to leave her here to rot." Curtis shook his head frantically. "No," he promised. "We have a deal." "You have a deal with a snake," I cut him off. "Look at me. Look at the man you are pretending to be. Do I look like a man who lets people walk all over him? Do I look like a victim?" Curtis stared at me. He saw the difference. He saw the iron in my spine that makeup could not replicate. "No," he whispered. "I am offering you a new deal," I said. "A real one. You help me destroy him. You help me get my life back. And I will pay for her surgery. I will send you both away with $1 million cash. I have the money, Curtis. I have always had the money." Curtis looked at his daughter. He looked at the machine keeping her alive. He looked at me. I saw the calculation in his eyes. He knew I was telling the truth. He knew Hunter was a liar. "What do I have to do?" he asked. "You have to finish the performance," I said, "but you have to change the script." Curtis swallowed hard. He reached up and tapped his chest right over his heart. He tapped it 3 times rapidly. Then he put a finger to his lips. "He is listening," he mouthed silently. He unbuttoned his shirt further. Taped to his chest was a small black device. A wire. It was transmitting everything. Hunter was listening right now. He was monitoring his investment. My mind raced. If Hunter heard my voice, it was over. He would send the mercenaries. He would kill us both. But Curtis had saved me. He had warned me. That meant he was on my side. I stood up and moved close to him. I leaned down until my mouth was inches from his ear. I motioned for him to speak normally to cover my whispers. "Say something," I whispered. "Say you are practicing your lines." Curtis cleared his throat. He spoke loudly, his voice shaking just a little. "I am Jeremiah Brooks. I built this company with my bare hands. I am not selling." "No, wait, that is wrong. I am selling. I am retiring." "Good," I whispered. "Keep talking." "Hunter is arrogant. He thinks he owns you. We are going to use that. We are going to make him think you are cracking up. We are going to make him think the pressure is getting to you." Curtis nodded, sweating. "I need a drink." "Where is the scotch?" "I cannot do this sober." I pointed to the kitchen. Curtis walked over his footsteps, heavy for the microphone to pick up. I followed him, staying in his shadow. "Listen to me," I whispered. "You are going to go back to that house. You are going to be difficult. You are going to be mean. You are going to treat Camilla like dirt. You are going to make Hunter nervous. You are going to make him think he is losing control of his puppet." "Why?" Curtis mouthed. "Because an angry man makes mistakes," I said. "I need him off balance. I need him focused on you so he does not see me coming." I grabbed a piece of paper and a pen from the table. I wrote down instructions, specific phrases only I would use, details about the business only I would know, things that would make Camilla question her sanity. "You're going to become me, Curtis, not the nice version, the version that fired 1,000 men, the version that survived the riots. You're going to scare them." Curtis read the notes. He looked at me with a new respect, and then on Friday I whispered, "When you sit down at that table to sign the papers, you stall, you break the pen, you fake a heart attack, you do whatever you have to do to buy me 5 minutes. Can you do that?" Curtis looked at his daughter one last time. He buttoned his shirt, hiding the wire. He looked at me, and for the first time he stood up straight. He mimicked my posture perfectly. He set his jaw just like I did. "I can do it," he said loudly for the microphone. "I am ready for the big day. I am going to be the best Jeremiah Brooks the world has ever seen." I nodded. I patted him on the shoulder. It was a silent seal on our pact. I slipped out the door and back into the shadows of the hallway. I waited until I heard him leave. I waited until his car drove away. Then I walked back out into the night. Otis was waiting in the van. "Did he go for it?" Otis asked. "He had no choice," I said. "Now take me to the tailor. If I am going to crash a funeral, I need to look like the man in the casket." We drove away, leaving the crumbling building behind. The pieces were moving. The trap was set. Hunter thought he was listening to a broken man in a cheap apartment. He did not know he was listening to his own executioner sharpening the blade. The play was about to begin, and I was the director, the lead actor, and the critic all rolled into one, and the final act was going to be a bloodbath. I sat in the back of the surveillance van parked 3 blocks away from my own estate, watching the monitor with the intensity of a bomb disposal technician. Otis adjusted the gain on the audio receiver. The feed crackled to life. I could hear the clinking of crystal glasses and the low hum of expensive conversation. Inside my dining room, the stage was set for the most dangerous performance of my life. Hunter had invited the private equity partners from Dubai to finalize the sale of my company. They were expecting to meet Jeremiah Brooks, the legendary tycoon. Hunter was expecting Curtis to play the role of a submissive old man ready to sign away his legacy. But I was the director tonight, and I had given Curtis a new script. Curtis walked into the dining room. Through the button camera hidden on his vest, I saw the scene. The long mahogany table was set with my finest china. Camilla sat at one end looking nervous in a silk dress. Hunter sat near the center pouring wine for 3 men in sharp suits. They all stood up when Curtis entered. I pressed the talk button on my microphone. "Showtime." I whispered into Curtis's earpiece. "Do not smile. Do not shake hands yet. You are the king, and they are in your court. Intimidate them." Curtis stopped in the doorway. He did not smile. He looked at the investors with a disdainful sneer that I had perfected over 40 years of dealing with sharks. He slowly unbuttoned his jacket and sat down at the head of the table without waiting for anyone else. He ignored Hunter's outstretched hand. "Gentlemen," Curtis rumbled his voice, dropping an octave to match my gravelly tone. "You are drinking my best Pinot Noir. I hope you have the checkbook to justify it, because I do not open the cellar for charity." The investors looked surprised, but then they smiled. They liked strength. They liked arrogance. Hunter looked confused. He flashed a warning look at Curtis, but Curtis ignored him. Camilla tried to play the hostess. "Darling, have some soup. The chef made your favorite lobster bisque." I saw the bowl of soup placed in front of Curtis. I leaned into the mic. "Throw it." Curtis picked up the spoon. He tasted the soup. He spat it back into the bowl with a loud, wet sound that silenced the room. He stood up and grabbed the bowl. He hurled it against the wall. The crash of fine china shattering was deafening. Orange bisque splattered across the expensive wallpaper. "This is cold," Curtis roared. "I told you I want it scalding. Are you trying to poison me, woman? Get this swill out of my face." Camilla let out a gasp of pure shock. She shrank back in her chair, terrified. She was used to the Curtis who did whatever she said. She was not used to the monster I could be when I was angry. And right now, Curtis was channeling every ounce of my rage. Hunter stood up, his face flushing red. "Jerry, calm down. It is just soup." "Sit down, boy," Curtis snapped, pointing a finger at Hunter. "Do not tell me to calm down in my own house. You are here because I allow it. These men are here because I allow it. If the soup is cold, it means the kitchen is incompetent. And if the kitchen is incompetent, I fire them. Just like I will fire you if you interrupt me again." The investors looked at each other and nodded. One of them whispered, "He is definitely a firebrand. I like him." Hunter looked like he had swallowed a lemon. He was losing control. His puppet had cut the strings. He tried to laugh it off, but his eyes were darting around the room looking for an explanation. I smiled in the van. "Good," I whispered. "Keep pushing. Make him sweat." Curtis sat back down and signaled for the wine. He drank deeply. For the next 20 minutes, he was a terror. He insulted the market projections. He corrected the investors on their own math. He told stories about the old days stories I fed him line by line that proved he knew where the bodies were buried. By the time the main course arrived, the investors were eating out of his hand, and Hunter looked ready to have a stroke. Hunter stood up abruptly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Excuse us, gentlemen," Hunter said, his voice tight. "I need a quick word with my father-in-law regarding the contract details. Jerry, come with me." It was a command, not a request. Hunter marched toward the kitchen. Curtis hesitated. "Go," I whispered. "He is rattled. This is where we break him." Curtis stood up and followed Hunter into the kitchen. The swinging door closed behind them, cutting off the view of the dining room. The camera angle shifted to the stainless steel appliances and the terrified staff who were trying to clean up the mess. "Out," Hunter hissed at the chef. "Everyone out. Now." The staff scrambled out the back door, leaving the two men alone. Hunter spun around. The polite mask was gone. His face was twisted in a snarl. He grabbed Curtis by the lapels of my suit and shoved him hard against the refrigerator. "What the hell are you doing?" Hunter whispered, his voice shaking with fury. "Are you drunk? Are you high? You are supposed to be the tired old man ready to retire. You are acting like a lunatic. You threw the soup. You insulted the buyers." I spoke into the earpiece, my voice calm and cold. "Tell him the truth, Curtis. Tell him he does not know business." Curtis shoved Hunter back. He smoothed his lapels with dignity. "I am closing the deal," Hunter Curtis said, repeating my words. "You are a soft boy from the suburbs. You think these men respect weakness. They do not. They respect power. If I act like a senile old fool, they will lowball us. If I act like a tiger, they will pay the premium. Do you want $10 million or do you want to be dead by Friday?" Hunter stared at him, stunned by the defiance. "I am the one calling the shots here," Hunter growled. "You are a hired actor. You do what I say." "No," Curtis countered. "Stepping into Hunter's space. I am the face of this franchise. Without me, you have nothing. You need me to sign those papers, so let me do it my way. Unless you want to go out there and tell them you hired a fraud. It was a gamble. A massive one." Hunter's hand twitched. I saw the violence in his eyes. He raised his hand and slapped Curtis across the face. It was a vicious backhanded strike that echoed in the tiled room. Curtis stumbled back, clutching his cheek. "Do not ever speak to me like that again," Hunter spat. "You are garbage. You are a tool. I own you. You finish this dinner, you play nice, and you sign those papers, or I will bury you right next to the real Jeremiah. Do you understand me?" Curtis nodded, keeping his head down. "I understand." "Fix your face," Hunter ordered, "and get back out there." Hunter turned to check his reflection in the oven glass, adjusting his tie. He took a deep breath, composing himself before heading back to the party. He did not see the door to the hallway crack open, just a fraction. But the camera on Curtis's chest saw it. Through the crack in the door, I saw a slice of a face. It was Jasmine. My daughter was standing in the hallway shadows. Her hand was over her mouth. Her eyes were wide with horror. She had seen everything. She had seen her husband, the man she thought was her protector, physically assault her frail father. She had heard the threats. Hunter pushed past the door, not noticing her hidden in the alcove. He went back to the guests. Curtis stood in the kitchen, rubbing his stinging cheek. He looked at the camera lens. He looked terrified. "She is there," I whispered. "Jazzy is in the hall." "This is it, Curtis. Talk to her." Curtis took a deep breath. He walked toward the door, but instead of going back to the dining room, he turned toward the hallway. He almost bumped into Jasmine. She flinched away from him as if he were radioactive. She looked at his red cheek. She looked at the kitchen door where Hunter had just exited. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. Did Hunter hit you?" Curtis looked at her. He looked tired. He looked sad. "It is okay, sweetie," he said softly. "I deserved it. I was being difficult. Hunter is under a lot of pressure." "No," Jasmine said, shaking her head, tears welling in her eyes. "No one deserves that. He hit you. He threatened you. Dad, why are you letting him treat you like this? You used to be so strong. You used to be the strongest man I knew." I leaned into the microphone. My heart was breaking for my daughter, but I needed to use this pain. I needed to wake her up. Tell her about the bike, Curtis. Tell her about the ducks. Curtis reached out and touched Jasmine's shoulder. She did not pull away this time. She was desperate for a connection. "Jazzy," Curtis said, his voice gentle. "Do you remember when you were 7? We were in Central Park." Jasmine froze, her eyes locked onto his. "You asked me about this yesterday." Curtis continued, repeating the words I fed him. "At the hospital. I was confused then. The medicine made my head swim. But I remember now. You fell off the pink bike with the tassels. You scraped your knee." Jasmine stopped breathing. She stared at him. "I bought you a blue popsicle," Curtis said, "to make it better. And we sat on the bench and watched the ducks until the sun went down. You fell asleep in my lap, and I carried you all the way to the car." Jasmine let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. She stepped back, her mind reeling. Yesterday at the hospital, you didn't know," Jasmine stammered. "I asked you. I begged you. You looked at me like I was a stranger. You said you didn't remember any bike," Hunter said. "Hunter said your memory was gone." "I remember now," Curtis said. "The fog is lifting, Jazzy. I remember everything." Jasmine looked at the kitchen door where her husband was laughing with investors. Then she looked back at the man she thought was her father. The contradiction was tearing her apart. If her father was senile, why did he remember the most specific, intimate detail of her childhood right now? But if he wasn't senile, why did he forget it yesterday? And why was Hunter hitting him? Why was Hunter drugging him? "Something is wrong," Jasmine whispered. Her voice was gaining strength, gaining an edge of suspicion I hadn't heard in years. "You are not sick, are you? Hunter is lying." "I am trapped," Jazzy Curtis said. "I am trapped in a nightmare." Before she could ask more, the dining room door opened. Hunter stuck his head out. "Jerry, get in here. We are toasting the deal." He saw Jasmine. His eyes narrowed. He looked from Curtis to his wife. He saw the tears on her face. He saw the red mark on Curtis's cheek. He realized instantly that he had made a mistake. "Jasmine, what are you doing down here?" Hunter asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous low tone. Jasmine wiped her face quickly. "Nothing. I heard a noise." Hunter walked over to her. He put his arm around her waist. It looked like a hug, but I knew it was a restraint. He squeezed her tight. "Your father had a little episode," Sweetie Hunter said, smiling with his mouth but not his eyes. He got confused again, fused. He thought he was back on a job site. I had to calm him down. "Go upstairs, take a pill. You look tired." He was dismissing her. He was gaslighting her right in front of my eyes. Jasmine looked at Hunter. For the first time, I saw something new in her expression. It wasn't love, it wasn't submission. It was fear. And behind the fear was a tiny spark of hate. "Okay, Hunter," she said softly. "I will go upstairs." She pulled away from him. She looked at Curtis one last time, a look of profound confusion and desperate need. Then she turned and walked up the stairs. Hunter watched her go. He turned back to Curtis. "One more screw-up," he hissed, "and I will pull the plug on you myself. Now get in there and sign the letter of intent." Curtis nodded. He walked back into the dining room. Hunter followed him, closing the door. In the van, I sat back and exhaled. My hands were shaking. Otis handed me a bottle of water. "Did you see her face?" Otis asked. "I saw it," I said. "She knows. She does not know what she knows yet, but the seed is planted. Jasmine was the key. Curtis was the weapon, but Jasmine was the shield. If I could get her to turn, if I could get her to stand up to Hunter, the whole house of cards would crumble. But I couldn't protect her yet. I had to let her sit with that fear. I had to let her wonder why her husband was a monster and why her father was a riddle. Friday was coming. The signing ceremony. The stage was set. Hunter thought he was closing a deal. He didn't know he was walking into an execution. And now, thanks to a bowl of soup and a blue popsicle, I had an insider who was waking up. "Get some rest, Curtis," I whispered into the mic, even though I knew he couldn't answer. "You did good. Now survive the night." The screen went black as Curtis entered a dead zone in the house. I was blind again, but for the first time in days, I wasn't hopeless. I had my team, I had my plan, and I had the one thing Hunter didn't have. I had the truth, and the truth was about to hit him like a freight train. The glow of the surveillance monitor bathed the interior of the van in a sickly green light. I sat next to Otis, staring at the screen that showed the interior of the master bedroom. My bedroom. The room where I had slept for 20 years was now occupied by a woman who had sold me out for a younger man is promise of power. Camilla was sitting at her vanity table applying night cream to her neck with obsessive upward strokes. She was terrified of aging. She fought every wrinkle as if it were a personal insult. She did not know that tonight she was going to age 10 years in 10 minutes. "It is ready," Jerry Otis said, his fingers hovering over the laptop keyboard. "We compiled everything. The photos from the club last night, the audio recording of Hunter bragging to his bookie, and the bank transfer confirmation. Send it, I commanded." I watched on the screen as Camilla's iPad lit up on the vanity. She ignored it at first. Then it chimed again, and again, a priority notification. She frowned and wiped the cream from her hands. She picked up the device. I watched her face transform. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. First came confusion, then shock, then a rage so pure and white-hot that it distorted her beautiful features into a mask of ugliness. She was looking at high-resolution photos of Hunter Van Doren, my son-in-law, her partner in crime. He was not working late at the office as he had told her. He was at a VIP lounge in the city surrounded by 3 women who were definitely not investors. But the photos were not the worst part. The worst part was the audio file attached to the email. I turned up the volume in the van so I could hear what she was hearing. Hunter's voice came through crystal clear, slurring slightly from expensive scotch. "The old lady." He was laughing. "Camilla is a joke. She is a wrinkled old hag who thinks she is still 25. I have to drink a bottle of wine just to look at her without gagging. But she is useful. She knows where the bodies are buried. Once I get the signature on Friday, I am dumping her in a nursing home right next to her husband. She served her purpose." Camilla dropped the iPad. It cracked against the marble floor, but she did not care. She stood up, breathing heavily, her chest heaving. Then she saw the last attachment. It was a screenshot from the Cayman Islands bank server. The $2 million in loose diamonds that she had stolen from our safety deposit box just days ago had been liquidated. The cash had been deposited into an account solely in Hunter's name. She let out a scream that the microphone barely contained. It was the sound of a thief realizing she had been robbed. She stormed out of the bedroom. I switched cameras, following her down the grand staircase. She was moving like a predator. She was heading for the study where Hunter was drinking my whiskey and counting his chickens before they hatched. "This is it," Otis whispered. The alliance is broken. Camilla threw open the double doors of the study. Hunter was sitting at my desk, his feet propped up on the leather surface. He looked up annoyed at the intrusion. "Knock much, Camilla," he sneered. "You thief!" Camilla shrieked. She flew across the room and swept the glass off the desk. It shattered against the bookshelf. "You stole my money. You stole the diamond money. That was my insurance policy. That was mine." Hunter stood up slowly, wiping whiskey droplets from his shirt. He did not look apologetic. He looked bored. "Technically, it was Jerry's money, Camilla. You just carried the bag. You promised me," Camilla yelled, her voice cracking. "You said we were partners. You said we would split everything 50-50. You said I was the only one who understood you." Hunter laughed. It was a cruel, dry sound. "Oh, grow up, Camilla. Partners. Look at you. You are a 58-year-old secretary who married her boss for money. You are a parasite. You bring nothing to the table except greed and paranoia. Did you really think I was going to split a $10 million empire with you? Did you really think I enjoyed our little strategy sessions?" He walked around the desk, closing the distance between them. Camilla held her ground, but I could see her trembling. "I made you," Camilla hissed. "I got you the access codes. I swapped the medication. I forged the signature on the power of attorney. Without me, you are just a broke broker with a gambling addiction. I can destroy you, Hunter. I can call the police right now. I can tell them everything." Hunter stopped inches from her face. His expression changed from boredom to menace. The predator had decided to stop playing with its food. "You won't call anyone," he said softly, "because you are just as guilty as I am. You think the police will cut you a deal. You poisoned your husband. You conspired to commit fraud. You go down just as hard as I do. I do not care," Camilla screamed. "I would rather rot in jail than let you play me for a fool. You used me. You called me a hag." "I heard the recording, Hunter. I saw the pictures." Hunter's eyes narrowed. He looked around the room, realizing someone had leaked information, but he did not have time to figure out who. He had a hysterical woman threatening to blow up his entire operation 48 hours before the finish line. "You are hysterical," Hunter said, his voice dripping with venom. "You need to calm down. You are acting like a crazy old woman." "Don't you call me old," Camilla shrieked. She raised her hand to slap him. It was a reflex born of humiliation and fury, but Hunter was faster. He caught her wrist in midair. He squeezed it until she cried out. "Do not touch me," he snarled. He twisted her arm and shoved her backward. Camilla stumbled in her high heels. She fell hard, hitting her hip against the heavy oak coffee table before crashing onto the floor. I flinched in the van. Even though she had betrayed me, even though she had left me to rot, seeing a man hit a woman made my blood boil. But I could not intervene. Not yet. Camilla lay on the floor, looking up at him in shock. Her perfect hair was a mess. Her face was pale. "You hit me," she whispered. Hunter looked down at her with pure disgust. He adjusted his cuffs. "You are a liability, Camilla. I should have dealt with you weeks ago. You think I loved you. You were a pawn, a chess piece, and now you are off the board." Camilla scrambled backward crab, walking across the carpet away from him. She was terrified. She finally saw the monster behind the expensive suit. She scrambled toward the door. "I am leaving," she sobbed. "I am going to the station. I am telling them everything. I do not care what happens to me. I want you dead." She tried to stand up, but her heel broke. She fell against the doorframe, grabbing the handle. Hunter moved with terrifying speed. He grabbed a handful of her hair, yanking her head back. She screamed. He dragged her away from the door like she was a rag doll. "You are not going anywhere," he roared. "You stay right here until I get my money." He dragged her out of the study and down the hallway toward the kitchen. I switched cameras, frantically tracking them. He kicked open the door to the pantry. At the back of the pantry was the heavy, reinforced door that led to the wine cellar. It was soundproof. It was windowless. It was a vault. "No, Hunter, please," Camilla begged, clawing at his hands. "I have claustrophobia. You know I cannot be in small spaces. Please, I will be quiet. I promise." "Shut up," Hunter shouted. He threw her down the stairs. She tumbled into the darkness. I heard the sickening thud of her body hitting the concrete floor below. She started screaming a high-pitched wail of absolute terror. Hunter slammed the heavy door shut. He threw the deadbolt. He leaned his forehead against the wood, breathing hard. "Stay there," he shouted through the door. "You stay there until I sell the company. Then I will come back and maybe I will let you go visit your husband in the ground. Or maybe I will just leave you there to rot. Nobody is going to come looking for you, Camilla. Nobody cares." He turned around, fixing his suit again, smoothing his hair. He walked back toward the kitchen, trying to regain his composure. He did not see the door to the servants' quarters slightly ajar. I switched the camera view. My heart stopped. Jasmine was standing there. She was hidden in the shadows of the narrow hallway that led to the laundry room. She was wearing her pajamas, clutching her robe tight around her body. Her hand was clamped over her mouth, stifling a scream. Tears were streaming down her face like rain. She had seen it all. She had seen her husband, the man she married, the man she defended against her own father, throw her mother down a flight of stairs. She had heard him call her mother a pawn. She had heard him admit to the poisoning and the fraud. Hunter walked right past her hiding spot. He was too full of adrenaline, too focused on his own survival to notice his wife trembling 5 feet away. He went to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water and chugged it. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Yeah, it is me," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "The deal is still on. I just had to take out some trash. No, do not worry about the old lady. She is contained. Friday, noon. Have the money ready." He walked out of the kitchen, heading upstairs to the guest room where he had been sleeping. Jasmine waited until his footsteps faded. She stepped out of the shadows. She looked at the pantry door where her mother was locked in the dark. She took a step toward it, wanting to help. But then she stopped. She looked at the ceiling toward where Hunter was. Fear paralyzed her. If she opened that door, Hunter would hear. If she tried to help her mother, she would be next. She knew that now. She knew he was capable of anything. She backed away. She retreated into the laundry room. She slid down the wall and pulled her knees to her chest. She rocked back and forth, silently sobbing. Her world had shattered. The father she thought was crazy was innocent. The husband she thought was a savior was a devil, and her mother was a co-conspirator who had turned on her own family for diamonds. In the van, Otis looked at me. "She knows Jerry," he said quietly. "She knows everything now." I nodded. My throat was tight. It broke me to see my baby girl in that much pain, to see her innocence ripped away so violently. But it was necessary. I could not save her with lies. The truth is a blade. It cuts deep, but it cuts out the rot. "She is scared," I said. "She feels alone." Otis tapped the screen. "What do we do?" "Do we go get her?" "No," I said. "Not yet. If we go in there now, Hunter calls his security. It turns into a shootout. Jasmine could get hurt. Curtis could get hurt. We need to wait for the signing. We need to wait until Hunter feels safe." "But she is in there with him," Otis argued. "She is smart," I said. "She is a Brooks. She will survive. She knows now that she has to play the game." "Look at her." On the screen, Jasmine stood up. She wiped her face. She took a deep breath. Her expression hardened. It was the same look I had seen in the mirror 1,000 times when business got tough. It was the look of survival. She walked out of the laundry room. She did not go to the basement. She did not go to Hunter. She went to the library. She picked up the landline phone. She dialed a number. I leaned forward. Who is she calling? She hung up after 2 rings. Then she dialed again. She is checking to see if the lines are monitored, I realized. Smart girl. She put the phone down. She went to the desk. She grabbed a piece of paper and a pen. She wrote something down. Then she folded it tiny and tucked it into her slipper. She walked out of the library and headed for the stairs. She was going back to the lion's den. She was going to sleep in the same house as the monster. I sat back in the van seat. The pieces were all on the board now. Camilla was neutralized. Curtis was turned, and Jasmine was awake. Hunter was alone, and he did not even know it. "Friday," I whispered. "Friday we end this." I looked at the screen one last time at the heavy door of the wine cellar. Camilla was in there screaming in the dark. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but I remembered the cold soup. I remembered the years of deception. She had made her bed in the dark. Now she had to lie in it. "Let us go, Otis," I said. "I have a funeral to prepare for, and the corpse needs to look his best." The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel smelled of fresh lilies and desperation. I was standing just outside the double mahogany doors, listening to the hum of the air conditioning and the murmur of 100 voices inside. Otis stood next to me. He straightened my tie. It was not the Italian silk tie I had worn for the last decade. It was a polyester blend I bought at a discount store in 1982. It was the tie I wore when I signed my first contract. It was the tie I wore when I buried my father. It was the only armor I had left. Inside the room, the sharks were circling. I could picture it perfectly. The long table draped in white linen, the crystal water pitchers sweating in the heat of the television lights, the lawyers sitting like vultures waiting for the carcass to fall. Hunter was standing behind the chair at the head of the table. He was smiling, that perfect white smile, but I knew his shirt was soaked with sweat. The Russian deadline was less than an hour away. If that money did not hit his account by noon, he was a dead man walking. Curtis sat in the chair. He was wearing my face. He was wearing my $3,000 suit. But he looked small. He looked like a child wearing his father's clothes. Hunter rested his hand on Curtis's shoulder. To the cameras and the press, it looked like a gesture of support, a loving son-in-law standing by the retiring patriarch. But I knew better. I knew that Hunter's grip was tight enough to bruise. I knew he was leaning down, whispering poison into Curtis's ear. "Sign it, old man." Hunter whispered, his voice barely audible over the shutter clicks of the cameras. "Sign it and you walk out of here. Sign it and you get your money. But if you hesitate, if you twitch, I will make sure your little girl never wakes up." I imagined Curtis flinching. I imagined the cold steel of a small blade or just the hard knuckle of Hunter's thumb digging into his spine through the chair. Hunter was desperate. He was cornered. And a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. The investors from Dubai sat across from them. They looked impatient. They checked their gold watches. They did not care about the drama. They just wanted the assets. They wanted the land, the equipment, the contracts. They wanted to strip my legacy for parts and ship it overseas. The lawyer slid the document across the table. It was thick, heavy. It was the death certificate of Brooks Construction. The paper made a dry, rasping sound against the cloth. "Please sign here, Mr. Brooks," the lawyer said, holding out a heavy fountain pen. "And initial here. And here." Curtis reached for the pen. His hand was trembling. It was not a subtle shake. It was a violent tremor, like a leaf in a gale. He gripped the pen so hard his knuckles turned white. He lowered the tip to the paper. The ink bled into the page, creating a dark blot that spread like a cancer. He stopped. He lifted the pen. He looked at the signature line. It was just a line. But to him, it was a trigger. If he signed, he killed my company. If he did not sign, Hunter killed his daughter. He froze. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the cameras. "Is there a problem, Mr. Brooks?" One of the investors asked, his voice thick with an accent and annoyance. Curtis opened his mouth, but no words came out. The pen slipped from his sweat-slicked fingers. It clattered onto the table and rolled off the edge, hitting the carpet with a dull thud. A murmur ran through the room. Hunter's smile vanished. He bent down to pick up the pen. As he straightened up, he leaned close to Curtis's ear. His face was a mask of pure fury hidden from the audience by the angle of his body. "Pick it up," Hunter hissed. "Pick it up and sign the paper. If you drop it again, I will text my guy right now. Do you understand me? She dies today, Curtis. She dies because you have shaky hands." Hunter shoved the pen back into Curtis's hand. He wrapped his own hand around Curtis's fist, forcing him to grip it. "He is having a moment," Hunter announced to the room, his voice booming with false joviality. "It is an emotional day. 40 years of leadership. It is hard to let go." Curtis looked up. He did not look at Hunter. He did not look at the contract. He looked past the lights, past the investors, past the cameras. He looked straight at the double doors at the back of the room. He was looking for me. I saw the signal on the monitor Otis was holding. Curtis blinked 3 times. That was it. He was done stalling. He was ready to die or be saved. "It is time," I said to Otis. Otis nodded. He signaled the boys. 24 men from the neighborhood lined up behind me. They were not wearing suits. They were wearing work boots and denim. They were wearing the uniform of the people who actually built this city. "Open it," I commanded. Otis kicked the double doors. They flew open with a crash that sounded like a gunshot. The heavy wood slammed against the walls, and the noise echoed through the silent ballroom like a thunderclap. Every head in the room turned. The cameras swiveled. The flashbulbs popped blindingly. I stepped into the light. I was not wearing the Italian silk they expected. I was wearing a gray wool suit that was 20 years out of style. The elbows were shiny with wear. The cuffs were frayed. It smelled of cedar and old memories. It was the suit I wore the day I laid the first brick of the first building I ever owned. It was the suit of a working man. I walked down the center aisle. My footsteps were heavy and deliberate. I did not limp. I did not hunch. I walked with the chest out, pride of a man who owns the ground he walks on. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a collective brain freeze. They looked at the man at the table in the expensive suit. Then they looked at me. They looked back and forth. It was like seeing a glitch in the Matrix. 2. Jeremiah Brooks. One polished and shaking, one rough and rock steady. Hunter froze. His hand was still on Curtis's shoulder. His mouth hung open. For the first time since this nightmare began, he looked truly terrified. He looked like a man seeing a ghost. I stopped 10 feet from the table. I looked Hunter dead in the eye. I did not shout. I did not scream. I projected my voice so it hit the back wall and bounced back. I am Jeremiah Brooks, and I am not selling a single brick of my company. The room exploded. Reporters started shouting questions. The investors stood up, knocking over their chairs. Lawyers were scrambling for their papers. "Who is that?" Hunter screamed, pointing at me. "Security. Get him out of here. He is an imposter. He is a crazy man from the street." But the security guards did not move. They were looking at me. They were looking at Curtis. They were paralyzed by the impossibility of it. I walked closer. I climbed the steps to the stage. I stood next to Curtis. The resemblance was terrifying up close, but up close you could see the details. You could see the sweat melting Curtis's makeup. You could see the fear in his eyes versus the fire in mine. I looked at the crowd. "Look at us," I roared. "Look closely. This man wears my face, but he does not wear my history." I raised my right hand. I held it up for the cameras. Hunter says I am crazy. Hunter says I am sick. But Hunter forgot one thing. You can steal a man his suit. You can steal his signature. But you cannot steal his scars. I slammed my hand down on the table right next to the contract. "Tell them, Curtis," I said softly. "Tell them who you are." Curtis looked at Hunter. He looked at me. He looked at the pen in his hand. Then he stood up. He reached up and grabbed the edge of the silicone prosthetic on his cheek. He ripped it off. "I am not Jeremiah Brooks," Curtis said, his voice shaking. "My name is Curtis Vance. And this man kidnapped my daughter." Pandemonium. The room erupted into a cacophony of shouting and shoving that felt less like a corporate board meeting and more like a riot in a prison yard. The flashbulbs from the press cameras were strobing so fast it looked like a lightning storm had been trapped inside the ballroom. Hunter was screaming at the top of his lungs, his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. "Security," he bellowed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Get them out of here. Arrest them all. That man is a lunatic. He escaped from a mental institution. He is violent. Shoot him if you have to." The private security team, dressed in black suits and earpieces, surged forward. They were mercenaries paid to protect the investment, and right now they saw me and my crew as the threat. They moved with the heavy aggression of men who enjoyed hurting people. I saw one of them reach for a baton and another unclip a taser. They were coming for me. They were going to drag me off that stage and throw me back into the dark hole Hunter had dug for me. But they forgot one thing. They were paid hourly. My men were paid in loyalty. Otis stepped forward. He did not look like much with his white hair and his arthritic hands, but he held a heavy walking stick like it was Excalibur. Behind him, the boys from the neighborhood formed a human wall. There was Big Mike, who ran the auto shop. There was Leon, who had done 10 years in state and came out preaching the gospel but still knew how to throw a hook. They linked arms. They planted their feet in their work boots on the plush carpet. They did not flinch. When the security guards slammed into them, it was like watching waves crash against a breakwater. The guards pushed and shoved, but the wall of denim and flannel did not move. Big Mike grabbed a security guard by the lapels and tossed him back into the crowd like a rag doll. Leon just stared a younger guard down until the kid backed off his hand, hovering uncertainly over his taser. "Stand down!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the noise. I did not shout it at my men. I shouted it at the room. I walked past the scuffle, ignoring the chaos swirling around me. I walked straight up to the podium where the microphone stood. I gripped the sides of the stand. I looked out at the investors from Dubai who were huddled in the corner looking terrified. I looked at the reporters who were filming everything on their phones. "I am Jeremiah Brooks," I said, and the sound system carried my voice into every corner of the room, silencing the murmurs. and I am here to tell you that this sale is a fraud." Hunter lunged toward me, but Otis stepped in his path, blocking him with his cane. Hunter bounced off the old man, snarling like a cornered animal. "Do not listen to him," Hunter screamed. "He is senile. He thinks he is me. He is a sick old man." I looked at Hunter with pity. He was unraveling. He was sweating through his suit. The clock was ticking and the Russians were waiting. "You say, I am not me," I said calmly. "You say this man in the chair is the real Jeremiah Brooks." I pointed at Curtis, who was sitting with his head in his hands, the torn prosthetic hanging from his cheek like dead skin. "Fine," I continued. "Let us settle this right now. No lawyers, no doctors, just the truth. If he is me, he knows what I know. If he built this company, he knows the foundations." I turned to Curtis. I walked over to him until I was standing right next to the chair. I could smell his fear. It smelled like sour sweat and cheap aftershave trying to mask it. "Stand up, Curtis," I said softly. Curtis stood up slowly. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw relief in his eyes. He wanted this to be over. He wanted to stop pretending. "One question," I said, holding up one finger. "Just one question to prove who owns this city." The room went deathly silent. Even Hunter stopped screaming. He was breathing hard, his eyes darting between us, trying to figure out an angle, trying to find a way to spin this. "In 1995, I said, my voice steady and loud, we broke ground on the Plaza Tower. It was the biggest contract of my life. It made this company. But we had a problem with the foundation. The soil was unstable. We had to dig deeper than the blueprints said." I leaned in close to Curtis. "Before we poured the concrete for the main pillar, I threw something into the wet cement. It was a superstition, a prayer. Nobody knows about it except me and the foreman, who is dead. Tell me, Curtis, what did I bury under the Plaza Tower to keep it standing?" Curtis stared at me. His mouth opened slightly. He looked blank. He looked lost. He had memorized my speeches. He had memorized my bank accounts. But he did not know my soul. He did not know the rituals of a man who built things to last. Hunter stepped up behind Curtis. He jabbed his thumb hard into Curtis' spine. I saw Curtis flinch from the pain. "Say something, you idiot," Hunter hissed, his voice a desperate whisper that the microphone still picked up. "Guess. Say it was a coin. Say it was a Bible. Say something, or I swear to God I will end you." Curtis looked at Hunter. He looked at the investors, waiting for an answer. He looked at the camera lenses that were zoomed in on his face, waiting to capture the lie. Then he looked at me. He looked at the real scar on my hand. He looked at the fire in my eyes. And he made a choice. He reached up with both hands. He grabbed the expensive silver wig that Hunter had paid thousands of dollars for. He ripped it off his head, throwing it onto the table among the contract papers. Then he grabbed the collar of the Italian shirt and yanked it open, popping the buttons, revealing the wire taped to his chest. "I do not know," Curtis said, his voice breaking, but it was loud and clear. "I do not know what is under the tower, because I did not build it." He looked at the cameras. Tears were streaming down his face, mixing with the stage makeup. "I am not Jeremiah Brooks. I am an actor. My name is Curtis Vance. This man paid me to steal his life." The room exploded again, but this time it was different. It was not confusion. It was outrage. The investors started shouting in Arabic and English, gathering their papers and storming toward the exit. The reporters were yelling questions. The flashbulbs were blinding. I turned to the crowd. "It was my father's boots," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I buried my father's work boots under that tower, because he never owned a house, but he taught me how to build one. That is the foundation of this company. Blood, sweat, and family, not fraud." I looked at Hunter. He was standing alone in the middle of the stage. His empire had evaporated in 10 seconds. The investors were gone. The deal was dead. The Russians would be coming for him. He was a dead man, and he knew it. His face went slack. His eyes went empty. And then they filled with a terrifying madness. He had lost everything. He had no moves left. Except one. He reached into his jacket. I thought he was going for his phone to call his lawyer or maybe his bookie. I stepped forward, ready to grab him, ready to hold him until the police arrived. But he did not pull out a phone. He pulled out a gun. It was a small black pistol, sleek and deadly. A coward's weapon. Screams tore through the ballroom. People dropped to the floor covering their heads. My men stepped forward, but I put out a hand to stop them. A gun changed the math. A gun meant people could die. Hunter waved the gun wildly. The barrel swept across the room, pointing at the reporters, pointing at the waiters, pointing at me. "Back off," he screamed. "Stay back. Nobody leaves." He was looking for a way out. He was looking for leverage. His eyes scanned the room frantically. And then they landed on the one person who had not moved. The one person who was standing frozen near the side exit watching her world burn. Jasmine. "No," I whispered. Hunter moved fast. He jumped off the stage. He sprinted toward her. Jasmine tried to run, but she was in shock. She stumbled. Hunter grabbed her by her hair. She screamed a sound that tore my heart in two. He yanked her up and wrapped his arm around her neck, dragging her backward. He jammed the barrel of the gun against her temple. "Let her go, Hunter!" I roared, stepping to the edge of the stage. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with the urge to kill. "Stay back, old man," Hunter shouted, saliva flying from his mouth. He dragged Jasmine toward the center of the room. He was using her as a human shield. Her eyes were wide with terror fixed on me. She was mouthing the word "Dad" over and over again. I said, "Back off," Hunter yelled, "or I will paint the walls with her brains. You think I won't? I have got nothing left to lose." He looked at the table where the contract lay unsigned. "Sign it," he screamed at me. "You sign it. You are the real one, right? You sign the transfer. Transfer the assets. Do it now or she dies." I looked at the gun pressing into my daughter's soft skin. I looked at the man I had welcomed into my home, the man I had treated like a son. I saw no humanity in him. I saw only a cornered rat willing to eat its own young to survive. "Okay," I said, raising my hands. "Okay, Hunter, calm down. I will sign. Just do not hurt her." I walked slowly toward the table. Every step felt like walking through quicksand. I picked up the pen that Curtis had dropped. It felt heavy in my hand. I looked at Hunter. "I am signing," I said, "but you have to let her go first." "Sign it first!" Hunter shrieked, pressing the gun harder. Jasmine whimpered. I bent over the paper. I put the pen to the signature line. I was Jeremiah Brooks. I had never surrendered in my life, but for her I would burn it all down. I would give him the company. I would give him the money. I just wanted my daughter back. But as the tip of the pen touched the paper, I remembered something. I remembered what Marshall had told me. I remembered the fail-safe. The dead man is trust. I looked up at Hunter. A strange calm washed over me. I realized I did not have to sign. I did not have to give him anything, because he had already lost. I dropped the pen. "I cannot sign it, Hunter," I said. He cocked the hammer of the gun. The click echoed in the silent room. "Why not?" he hissed. Because I whispered so only he could hear. "I am already dead." I looked at the barrel of the gun pressing into my daughter's temple, and I felt a strange calm settle over me like a heavy wool blanket. It was the same calm I felt 40 years ago when I stood on the edge of a skyscraper skeleton while the wind tried to blow me off. It was the clarity of knowing that the worst had already happened, so there was nothing left to fear. Hunter was vibrating with adrenaline and terror. His eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a miracle, looking for a reason to pull the trigger. He expected me to beg. He expected me to fall to my knees and offer him the world. But I did not move. I did not blink. I looked at him with something worse than hate. I looked at him with pity. "You can shoot her, Hunter," I said, my voice low and steady enough to be picked up by the microphones that were still recording every second of his breakdown. "You can paint the walls with her blood. You can kill me too. You can kill everyone in this room. But it will not change the math. You are not going to get a single dime, not one penny, not one share of stock. The vault is closed, Hunter, and you are on the outside." Hunter screamed a sound of pure frustration. He jammed the gun harder against Jasmine, his skin making her whimper. "Shut up, old man," he yelled. "I have the power of attorney. I have the medical reports. I have the contract right here. You sign it or she dies. And after she dies, I will kill your wife in the cellar, and I will burn this whole legacy to the ground. I will kill your whole family just to watch you cry." He was unraveling. The mask of the sophisticated businessman had melted away, revealing the scared little boy who owed money to bad men. He thought violence was power. He did not understand that real power is written in ink, not blood. I took a step closer. The security guards flinched, but they did not stop me. They saw the gun. They saw the madness. They wanted no part of this. "You do not get it, Hunter," I said. "You think you beat me because you put me in a hospital. You think you beat me because you stole my face. But you forgot the first rule of construction. Always check the foundation before you build. I nodded to Thaddeus Marshall, who was standing by the stage. Thaddeus was holding his phone up. He had it connected to the ballroom sound system via Bluetooth. He tapped the screen. "Listen," I said. The sound of a phone dialing rang out through the massive speakers. It was a loud rhythmic trill that echoed off the high ceilings. Then a computerized voice answered. It was the automated account verification system for First City Bank. "Welcome to First City Bank Corporate Services," the robotic voice said. "Please enter your account number." Marshall typed in the number. We all knew it by heart. It was the main operating account for Brooks Construction, the account that held the liquidity for the entire empire. "Please enter your security PIN," the voice asked. Marshall typed it in. The room held its breath. Hunter was staring at the speakers, his gun wavering slightly. He knew something was wrong. He could feel the floor dropping out from under him. "Account verified," the voice said, cheerful and cold. "Current available balance, $0.00." The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than the silence of a tomb. Hunter lowered the gun just an inch. His face went slack. What he whispered. "That is impossible. There was $50 million in there yesterday." Marshall typed again. He accessed the investment portfolio. Current balance $0.00. He accessed the offshore holding accounts. Current balance $0.00. Hunter looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a dawning horror. He looked like a man who had just realized he had jumped out of a plane without a parachute. "Where is it?" he screamed. "Where is the money, Jerry? You moved it. You cannot move it. I have the power of attorney." I froze the accounts. I shook my head slowly. "I did not move it, Hunter. You did." I took another step forward. I wanted him to see the victory in my eyes. "It is called the dead man is trust," I said. "It is a clause I wrote into the corporate bylaws 20 years ago. It is a poison pill, a fail-safe. The moment a court declares me mentally incompetent, the moment a death certificate is signed, or the moment I am declared missing without a body, the trust activates." I pointed at the papers on the table. "You were so eager to erase me, Hunter. You bribed the doctors. You forged the medical reports. You filed the emergency motion with the court this morning to declare me a vegetable. You succeeded. Congratulations. You proved legally that Jeremiah Brooks is gone." I paused, letting the words sink in. And the second that court order was stamped, the dead man is trust executed. Clause 1 states that in the event of my incapacity, 100% of my liquid assets, my stocks, and my property titles are automatically and irrevocably transferred to the National Association of Black Veterans. It is a donation, Hunter, a charitable gift. It happened at 9 a.m. this morning. The money is gone. The company you are trying to sell is an empty shell. It owns nothing. It is worth nothing. I smiled. It was a cold, hard smile. "You spent months trying to steal my kingdom. You lied. You cheated. You hurt my family, and all you managed to steal was a pile of paper and a whole lot of debt. You are holding a gun to my daughter's head for $0. Hunter staggered back. The reality of his failure hit him like a physical blow. He had committed crimes that would put him away for life. He had destroyed his marriage. He had tormented a dying girl, and he had done it all for absolutely nothing. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. "No, you are lying. It is a trick. You can reverse it. Call the bank. Reverse it now." "I cannot," I said. "That is the beauty of a dead man is trust. Dead men cannot change their minds. It is done." Hunter looked around the room. The investors were gone. The reporters were filming his ruin. He was alone on an island of his own making. And then in the pocket of his beige suit, his phone began to ring. It was not a normal ringtone. It was a specific jarring buzzer. Hunter froze. He knew that ringtone. He had set it for only one contact. Petrov. The Russian mob. The deadline had passed. The money was not there. And now the Reaper was calling to collect. Hunter stared at the vibrating pocket of his jacket. His face turned the color of ash. His hand shook so violently that the gun rattled against Jasmine's head. He knew what that call meant. It meant there was no escape. It meant prison was the safest place he could go because on the street he was a dead man. He looked at me. He looked at the phone. He looked at the gun. He was trapped in a box with no doors. His breathing became shallow and rapid. He was hyperventilating. Panic had taken the wheel. "It is over, Hunter," I said, my voice commanding. Put the gun down. The police are outside. The Russians know where you are. You have one card left to play. Do not throw it away by hurting her. If you hurt her, you die today. If you let her go, you might live to see a jail cell." Hunter looked down at Jasmine. He did not see his wife anymore. He did not see a person. He saw a hostage who had lost her value. His grip on her neck loosened just a fraction. His eyes drifted to the buzzing phone in his pocket, distracted by his own impending doom. That was the mistake. Jasmine felt the hesitation. She felt his arm relax. She saw her chance. She did not scream. She did not try to pull away. She opened her mouth and clamped her teeth down onto the fleshy part of Hunter's forearm. She bit him with everything she had. She bit him with the rage of a woman betrayed. She bit him for the lies. She bit him for her mother in the cellar. She bit him for me. Hunter howled in pain. He instinctively yanked his arm back. The gun swung away from her head. Jasmine dropped to the floor. She scrambled on her hands and knees, crawling away from him, crawling toward me. "Run, Jazzy!" I shouted. She scrambled across the carpet, her heels kicking off her dress, tearing. She threw herself behind my legs, burying her face in my coat. I wrapped my arms around her, shielding her with my body. I turned my back to Hunter, exposing myself to the gun. But I did not care. I had my daughter back. The money was gone. The company was gone. But I had the one thing that mattered. I looked over my shoulder at Hunter. He was clutching his bleeding arm, staring at us with wild eyes. The phone in his pocket stopped ringing. The silence returned. He raised the gun again, pointing it at my chest. But his hand was wavering. He knew it was over. He knew he had lost. "Shoot me," I challenged him. "Go ahead. Add murder to the list. It will not bring the money back. It will not stop the Russians. You are done, Hunter. You are just a ghost haunting a room full of living people." He stared at me. And for the first time I saw tears in his eyes. Not tears of remorse. Tears of a spoiled child who broke his favorite toy and realized no one was going to buy him a new one. "I hate you," he whispered. "The feeling is mutual, son," I said. "Now drop it, or my friends here will drop you." Otis and the boys stepped forward, cracking their knuckles. The security guards stepped back, letting them pass. Even the mercenaries knew when the tide had turned. Hunter was alone. Completely and utterly alone. Hunter stood alone in the center of the ballroom, and the silence around him was heavy enough to crush a man. The gun in his hand was no longer a weapon of power. It was a heavy, useless piece of metal that he did not know how to put down. He looked at the investors fleeing through the emergency exits. He looked at the reporters filming his destruction. He looked at me standing with my daughter safe in my arms. And then he looked at his phone, which had stopped ringing, but the vibration of that Russian deadline was still echoing in his bones. He knew what was waiting for him outside those doors. The Petrov organization did not accept excuses, and they certainly did not accept bankrupt construction companies as payment. The madness in his eyes solidified into a cold, jagged resolve. He realized he had no future. He realized he was a dead man walking. And if he was going to die, he decided he was not going alone. He raised the gun again. He did not aim it at Jasmine this time. He did not aim it at the police who were shouting through the bullhorns outside. He aimed it directly at my chest. His hand stopped shaking. "You took everything from me," Hunter whispered, his voice carrying across the silent room. "You took my money. You took my reputation. You took my life, so now I am taking yours." I did not move. I did not flinch. I pushed Jasmine behind me, shielding her with my body one last time. I looked him in the eye. I wanted him to see that I was not afraid. I wanted him to see that Jeremiah Brooks does not run. "Do it!" I challenged him. "Pull the trigger. But know that you are dying for nothing. You are dying a failure." Hunter screamed a sound of pure primal hate. His finger tightened on the trigger. I saw the hammer pull back. I braced myself for the impact, but the shot never came from his gun. The glass skylight above the ballroom shattered with a deafening crash. Tactical ropes dropped from the ceiling, and heavily armed SWAT officers descended like black angels of judgment. At the same time, the side service doors burst open. Mr. Henderson had done his job. He had not just called the regular police, he had called in the full tactical response team, alerting them to an active shooter situation with high-value hostages. "Drop the weapon," the lead officer screamed. Hunter spun around, startled by the sudden violence of their entry. In his panic, he jerked the gun toward the officers. It was a suicide move. 3 shots rang out. They were loud, concussive booms that made my ears ring. Hunter jerked backward as if he had been kicked in the chest by a mule. A red mist sprayed into the air behind him. He spun, pirouetting on his expensive Italian loafers, and collapsed onto the white marble floor. The gun clattered away from his hand, sliding across the tiles until it stopped at my feet. The room was filled with the smell of gunpowder and the shouts of officers securing the perimeter. I stepped forward, away from Jasmine. I walked over to where Hunter lay. He was gasping for air, his hand clutching his shoulder where the bullets had shattered the bone. He was not dead. The police shoot to stop the threat, not to execute. But looking at the blood pooling around him, I knew his life as he knew it was over. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with shock and pain. He tried to speak, but only a gurgle of blood came out. I stood over him, looking down at the man I had once trusted with my legacy. I did not feel triumph. I did not feel joy. I felt a deep, weary sadness. "You did not lose because you were stupid. Hunter," I said, my voice low and hard. "You are smart. You are brilliant even. You built a house of cards that almost fooled the world." I crouched down so he could hear me clearly over the chaos. "You lost because you are greedy. You wanted the fruit, but you did not want to plant the tree. You wanted the crown, but you did not want the weight. That is the difference between a builder and a thief. A builder knows the value of the work. A thief only knows the price." Hunter closed his eyes, tears of pain leaking out. Paramedics rushed in, pushing me aside to work on him. I stood up and straightened my old suit. I turned my back on him. He was no longer my problem. He belonged to the state now. And after the state was done with him, the Russians would be waiting. The chaos in the ballroom began to settle into a controlled buzz of police procedure. Officers were taking statements. My men were being questioned but treated with respect. Otis gave me a nod from across the room. We had won, but there was one loose end left. One piece of the puzzle that was still missing. Then I heard a commotion near the kitchen entrance. A woman was screaming, "Let me go. I am his wife. I am Mrs. Brooks. Get your hands off me." 2 officers dragged Camilla into the ballroom. She looked like a wreck. Her red dress was torn and covered in dust from the wine cellar floor. Her hair, which was usually lacquered into a helmet of perfection, was wild and matted. Her makeup was smeared, giving her the appearance of a deranged clown. She had been locked in the dark for 2 days, terrified, alone, and listening to her own demons. She scanned the room, her eyes darting frantically until they landed on me. For a second she looked confused, seeing me standing there in my old suit. Then she saw Curtis sitting on the edge of the stage, wiping makeup off his face. And finally she saw the pool of blood where Hunter had fallen. The reality of the situation hit her. She realized the coup had failed. She realized she was alone. She broke free from the officers with a burst of desperate strength. She ran toward me. She threw herself at my feet, grabbing my legs. She was sobbing hysterically. "Jerry, oh, thank God," she wailed. "Thank God you are okay. It was awful. He locked me up. Hunter is a monster. He forced me, Jerry. He forced me to do everything." I was so scared. I tried to stop him. I tried to tell you. I looked down at the woman I had shared my bed with for 20 years. The woman I had bought diamonds for. The woman I had trusted with my life. She was clinging to my trousers, ruining the fabric with her tears and her lies. "Please, baby," she begged, looking up at me with those big manipulative eyes. Tell them I am a victim. Tell them I love you. We can fix this. We can go back to how it was. I forgive you for everything. Just help me." I felt a cold disgust rise in my throat. She forgave me. She had the audacity to say she forgave me. I reached down and pried her fingers off my legs. I did it slowly, deliberately. I stepped back, creating a physical distance between us that matched the emotional chasm she had created. "Get up, Camilla," I said, my voice ice cold. She stood up, trembling, wiping her face, hoping she had broken through. "Jerry," she whispered, reaching for my hand. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the small digital recorder that Curtis had worn during the dinner. I held it up. "Do not touch me," I said. I pressed the play button. Camilla's voice rang out clear and sharp, cutting through her sob story. "Hurry up, Hunter. The smell of this old man is making me sick. I cannot wait until he is gone so I can breathe again. Just put him in the asylum and let him rot. I want the money." The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. Camilla went pale. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The mask of the victim crumbled, revealing the greedy, hateful woman underneath. I handed the recorder to the nearest police officer. "This is evidence," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is Mrs. Brooks conspiring to commit fraud, kidnapping, and involuntary commitment. She was not forced officer. She was the architect." Camilla looked at the officer, then back at me, her face twisted into a snarl. "You old fool," she spat, showing her true colors at last. "You should have died. You are nothing but a walking wallet. I hated every second with you. I hated your touch. I hated your voice. I deserve that money. I earned it putting up with you." I looked at her, and I felt nothing. No anger, no love. Just a profound sense of relief that I never had to pretend to like her cooking again. "You loved the money more than you loved yourself, Camilla," I said. "You sold your soul for diamonds. Now you can go sit in a cell and think about how much they were worth. Officer, take her away." The police grabbed her arms. This time she did not fight. She went limp, defeated by her own words. As they dragged her out, she did not look at me. She looked at the chandeliers above, calculating how much they would fetch at auction. She was a tragedy of her own making. I watched her go. The ballroom was almost empty now. The press had been ushered out. The paramedics had taken Hunter away. It was just me, the police, and one other person sitting quietly on the edge of the stage, Curtis. He was still wearing my suit, but he had taken off the jacket. He sat with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. He looked exhausted. He looked small. He was not an imposter anymore. He was just a man who had made a lot of bad choices for a good reason. I walked over to him. He looked up, flinching slightly, expecting a blow or handcuffs. "Mr. Brooks," he said, his voice hoarse. I did what you said." "You did?" I agreed. "You played the part perfectly. You bought me the time I needed." Curtis looked around the empty room. "Am I going to jail?" "Probably," I said honestly. "You committed fraud, Curtis. You impersonated me. You signed legal documents. The law does not care about your reasons. You are going to have to answer for that." Curtis nodded, tears welling in his eyes again. "I know. I wanted to save her." I reached into the inside pocket of my old gray jacket. I pulled out a checkbook. It was not the company checkbook. It was my personal account. The one that the dead man's trust had not touched because it was in a credit union in the neighborhood. I wrote a check. I wrote it for $1 million. I signed it with my own hand, steady and firm. I tore the check out and held it out to him. "This is for her," I said. Curtis stared at the piece of paper. His hand shook as he took it. He looked at the zeros. He looked at me. "Why?" he whispered. "After everything I did to you." "Because a father does what he has to do for his child," I said. "I know that feeling, Curtis. You were willing to become a monster to save her. I can respect the motive even if I hate the method." He clutched the check to his chest like it was a lifeline. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I will pay you back. I swear. I do not want your money," I said, my voice hardening. "And I do not want your gratitude." I leaned in close so only he could hear. "You take that money, you get your daughter the best doctors in the world, you save her life, and then you take whatever is left and you move far away. If I ever see your face again, Curtis, if I ever hear that you are running scams or impersonating people, I will not send the police. I will send Otis, and he won't be bringing a checkbook. Do you understand me?" Curtis nodded rapidly, swallowing hard. "Yes, sir. I understand. You will never see me again." "Good. Now get out of here before the feds decide to ask you questions I cannot answer." Curtis stood up. He looked at me one last time. He touched his own face, the face that looked so much like mine. "You are a hell of a man, Jeremiah Brooks," he said. "And you are a hell of an actor, Curtis Vance," I replied. "Now vanish." He turned and ran. He ran out the service doors, running toward his daughter, running toward a second chance he probably did not deserve, but one I was giving him anyway. I stood alone in the center of the ballroom. The floor was scuffed. The tables were overturned. There was police tape near the stage. My empire had been shaken to its core. My family was gone. My money was in limbo. But I was standing. I was breathing. I was Jeremiah Brooks, and I had cleaned house. The red and blue lights of the police cruisers painted the street outside the hotel in a chaotic rhythm, but for the first time in days, my mind was quiet. I stood on the sidewalk watching the ambulance doors close on Hunter. I watched the squad car drive away with Camilla in the back, staring blankly out the window. They were gone. The parasites had been surgically removed. But the wound they left behind was standing right in front of me, shivering in a torn evening gown and holding her high heels in her hand. Jasmine looked at me with the eyes of a child who had woken up from a nightmare, only to realize the monster was real. She took a step toward me, her lower lip trembling. She reached out to grab my coat, looking for the safety she had known her entire life. "Daddy," she sobbed, "I want to go home. Please take me home. I cannot be alone. I am scared." I looked at my daughter. I wanted to wrap her in my arms. I wanted to put her in the back of my car, drive her to the mansion, and tell her that everything was going to be okay. That was what I had always done. When she failed a test, I fixed it. When she crashed her first car, I bought her a new one. When she married a man I did not trust, I gave him a job. I had spent 30 years paving the road in front of her so she would never stumble, and that was exactly why we were standing here tonight. I stepped back. I did not let her touch me. The rejection hit her like a slap. She froze her hand, hovering in the air. "You cannot go home, Jasmine," I said, my voice heavy with a grief that felt older than my bones. "The mansion is a crime scene, and even if it wasn't you, do not live there anymore. You made your choice. You chose him." But I didn't know, Jasmine cried. "He lied to me. He tricked me. He did lie, I agreed. But you saw the bruises on me at the hospital and you looked away. You saw him hit Curtis in the kitchen and you stayed silent. You saw him throw your mother down the stairs and you hid in the laundry room. You were not tricked, Jasmine. You were cowardly." She flinched. She dropped her gaze to the pavement, tears splashing onto her bare feet. "I know," she whispered. "I am sorry. I was trying to survive. I will do better, Daddy. I promise. Let me come back. I will take care of you. We can be a family again." I shook my head slowly. "We cannot go back," I said. "I broke you, Jasmine. I broke you by making your life too easy. I protected you so much that you never learned how to fight. You never learned how to stand on your own 2 feet. If I take you back now, if I let you move into the guest room and pay your bills, I am just finishing the job Hunter started. I am keeping you weak." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a card. It was not a credit card. It was a business card for a small apartment complex in the city, one of the affordable ones I owned through a shell company. "Go here," I said, handing it to her. "The manager knows me. He will give you a unit. It is small, it is loud, but it is safe." Jasmine looked at the card with horror. "The Heights," she said. "Daddy, that is." "That is a bad neighborhood." "It is a starting line," I corrected her. "You are going to get a job, Jasmine. Not at my company. You are going to wait tables or answer phones or scrub floors. You are going to earn your bread. You are going to learn what $1 actually weighs." "But my son," she cried. "Your grandson, he needs private school. He needs clothes." I reached into my pocket again. I pulled out a check. It was already written. "This is for the boy," I said. "This pays for his school and his medical bills, directly to the institutions. Not a penny goes to you. If I find out you spent a dime of this on yourself, I will cut him off too. Do you understand?" Jasmine stared at me. She saw the iron in my eyes. She realized that the ATM was closed. The daddy who fixed everything was gone. In his place was Jeremiah Brooks, the man who survived the streets. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know," I said softly. "But one day when you look in the mirror and you see a woman who can survive without a man holding her hand, you might just thank me." I turned my back on her. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than building the tower. Harder than fighting the assassin. I walked away listening to her crying on the sidewalk. I did not look back. I had to let her fall, so she could finally learn how to get up. The next morning, I walked into the lobby of Brooks Construction. The security guard at the front desk looked up. He did not ask for ID. He stood up and saluted. "Welcome back, Mr. Brooks." I nodded and walked to the elevator. I pressed the button for the top floor. The ride was smooth and silent. When the doors opened, the office was in chaos. People were packing boxes. Shredders were running. Hunter's cronies, the yes men he had hired to replace my loyal staff, were trying to loot the ship before it sank. I walked into the bullpen. "Stop," I said. I did not shout, but the room froze. I walked to the center of the room. I looked at the vice president of operations, a man named Miller, who had helped Hunter forge the inventory reports. "Get out," I said. Miller stammered. "Mr. Brooks, we thought, the trust." "The trust has a clause," I said, my voice echoing off the glass walls. "The Lazarus Clause. If Jeremiah Brooks proves he is alive and of sound mind within 30 days of the transfer, the assets revert. I am alive, I am sane, and I am taking back my house. I looked around the room. If you helped him, pack your things. If you looked the other way, pack your things. If you want to work for a ghost, get out. Half the room emptied in 5 minutes. They scurried away like roaches when the lights turn on. I walked into my office. It smelled of Hunter as cheap cologne. I opened the window to let the city air in. Marshall walked in behind me. He was smiling. "We got the accounts back, Jerry," he said. "The bank reversed the transfers. The Russians are out of luck." "Good," I said. "Now I need you to do one more thing." I handed him a file. It was the personnel file for Nia, the nurse from St. Jude. "Find her," I said. "She risked her career and her life for a patient she did not know. That is the kind of integrity you cannot buy. I want her running the charitable foundation. I want her to have a full scholarship to medical school if she wants it, and pay her the $50,000 I promised. With interest." Marshall nodded, jotting it down. "Done. And what about you, Jerry? Are you back for good?" I looked out the window at the skyline I had helped build. I saw the Plaza Tower standing tall and proud. I saw the bridges. I saw the steel and glass. "No," I said. "I am too old for this, Marshall. I saved the company, but I do not want to run it. I want to build a board of directors made up of people from the neighborhood. People like Otis. People who know what it means to build something from nothing. I will teach them. And then I am going to really retire." Marshall laughed. "You retire. I will believe it when I see it." "Believe it," I said, "because I have a tea time." 3 months later, I stood on the 9th green of the golf course. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It was quiet. The only sound was the wind in the trees and the distant hum of the city. I was alone. The mansion was empty. I had sold it. It was too big for one man. I bought a penthouse in the city closer to the action but high enough to be quiet. Camilla was in a federal prison in upstate New York. She sent letters every week begging for money for the commissary. I burned them without opening them. Hunter was in a maximum security facility waiting for his trial. The Russians had apparently decided that letting him rot in fear was better than killing him quickly. Jasmine was working double shifts at a diner in Queens. I went there once, sat in the back, and watched her. She looked tired. She looked thin, but she was moving fast, carrying trays, smiling at customers, earning her tips. She looked stronger. I left a $100 bill on the table and walked out before she saw me. I teed up my ball. I adjusted my grip. My ribs still ached when it rained, but my hands were steady. My phone rang in the golf cart. It was Henderson. "Mr. Brooks," he said. "I know you said no calls, but there is someone here to see you." I sighed. "Henderson, I am retired. Send them away." "It is a young woman," Henderson said. "She says her name is Sarah Vance. She says she is Curtis's daughter. She wants to thank you. She says the surgery worked. She is alive because of you." I lowered my club. I looked at the horizon. I thought about Curtis running into the night with that check. I thought about the little girl in the hospital bed. Tell her I was busy. Tell her I did not want gratitude. But then I stopped. I was a man who had lost his family. I was a man who had been erased and had to write himself back into existence. Maybe it was okay to be thanked. Maybe it was okay to let someone in. "Tell her to meet me at the clubhouse," I said. "I will buy her a lemonade." I hung up the phone. I looked down at the ball. I took a deep breath, smelling the grass and the freedom. "Life is long," I said to the empty air. I swung the club. The impact was perfect. The ball soared into the sky, a tiny white speck against the vast blue sailing toward the future. I watched it fly until it disappeared. Then I put the club back in the bag and started walking. I had a meeting to get to. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to tomorrow. Here is the lesson learned and the CTA for your script. The lesson. Jeremiah's journey reminds us that true power isn't written in bank statements or legal contracts. It is forged in the fires of adversity. You can strip a man of his assets, his name, and even his freedom, but you cannot steal his character or his history. While greed turned his closest blood relatives into monsters, loyalty turned strangers from the street into true family. The most valuable lesson here is that rock bottom isn't a grave. It is a solid foundation to rebuild upon. Ultimately, the only thing more dangerous than a man with nothing to lose is a man who knows exactly what he is worth. Call to action. If you believe that integrity is the only currency that never devalues, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold.